Chapter 668. Boom, boom, boom. The surging divine thought power surged out like a tidal wave and instantly crushed the space around the flaming spirit. Bang! The flaming halos were unable to resist this level of spiritual consciousness attack and crumbled one after another. With a shrill cry, the flaming spirit's body collapsed and turned into a sea of flames. Phew! Seeing this, Feng Tianyi could not help but heave a sigh of relief. However, he did not let down his guard and stared at the ball of flames. Buzz! Gulp! Gulp! Suddenly, the cluster of flames split apart. Immediately, it turned into a couple of clusters of flames and condensed into 7 figures. Every figure was exactly the same as the flaming spirit from before. Even their auras had not changed. What's going on? 7 level, 58 divine thought guardians? The corner of Feng Tianyi's mouth twitched, and he immediately took a step back. Feng Tianyi was sure that among the 7 figures, there were definitely fake doppelgangers. The difference in strength between 7 level 58 divine thought and 1 level 58 divine thought was like heaven and earth. In the previous 2 stages, the final guardians were around level 58. There was no reason for the difficulty to suddenly increase at this stage. Ha! The moment the 7 flaming spirits took shape, they laughed sinisterly at the same time. Immediately, they rushed forward together. Red flames flicker on their hands as they smash toward Feng Tianyi's face. Feeling the scorching aura coming toward him, Feng Tianyi did not dare to take it head-on. He quickly turned his body and, at the same time, clenched his fists and counterattacked the attacking figures. Boom! Both fists pierced through the 2 flaming spirits. In the next moment, the 2 figures collapsed at the same time. However, before Feng Tianyi could rejoice, an attack that was mixed with a surging sea of divine telekinesis hit his chest with a loud bang. Poof! The power penetrated the divine thought power that was protecting Feng Tianyi, causing his internal organs to ache. Damn it, it really is the real body and the fake body. Feng Tianyi gritted his teeth and his eyes turned cold. The divine thought power in his eyes suddenly turned into a needle and ruthlessly pierced the flaming spirit that was attacking his chest. Buzz! Bam! However, the expected miserable shriek did not come out. The flame spirit crumbled once again. Bam! Humph! Behind Feng Tianyi, another attack fell, suddenly knocking Feng Tianyi's body down. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At the same time, the flames gathered and the 3 figures that had collapsed earlier appeared again. Damn it! How can it transfer doppelgangers so quickly? Feng Tianyi's body of the flaming spirit of the flaming spirits. Feng Tianyi's eyes turned as his divine thought power. In the next moment, the divine telekinesis swept across the sky like a tsunami, sweeping towards the 7 flaming spirits. Since I can't find your real flaming spirit, I will crush all your doppelgangers. In the next moment, Feng Tianyi's flaming spirits, flaming. Buzz, buzz, flaming. Amidst the whistling sounds, the 7 flaming spirits actually hugged each other, holding hands as they spun rapidly. Hoo. Beep, beep, beep. In an instant, flames surged out of every flame spirit's body. As they spun at high speed, the flames turned into a sea of fire and protected them. Boom! The power of divine sense descended and collided with the flames with a loud bang. In the next moment, Feng Tianyi suddenly felt a scorching aura and could not help but gasp. He quickly dispersed his divine thought power attack and stared at the flaming spirit. Hee. 7 sinister laughs sounded at the same time. It was especially horrifying. However, the 7 flaming spirits did not stop because Feng Tianyi had dispersed his divine thought power attack. On the contrary, they swept towards Feng Tianyi. Damn it! Feng Tianyi frowned. He was not afraid at all. He gathered all his divine thought power in front of him and went straight for them. Buzz! Boom! In the next moment, Feng Tianyi's body collided with the flames in the sky. Almost in an instant, that flame collapsed. However, the other flames ran to the two sides of Toda, mixed with a violent power, and suddenly fell down. Bam! Feng Tianyi did not have time to use his divine thought power before he was sent flying. Then, the 7 flaming spirits attacked one after another. Toyota quickly counterattacked. However, every time he attacked, it was all fake. At the moment he attacked, the flaming spirit's real body directly changed and attacked him head-on, causing him great pain. Feng Tianyi did not expect the flaming spirits to change their figures so quickly. However, there was nothing he could do. He could only choose to hide and protect himself. His mind raced as he tried to think of a way to counter the flaming spirit's attack. He had to admit that the flaming spirit's attack was too powerful. If they attacked together, they would not be able to crush them. If they attacked separately, they would not be able to find their real bodies. Therefore, the 7 flaming spirits surrounded Feng Tianyi and beat him up. At this time, Shen Qingyun, Lin Yi, and the others had almost finished off the fiery beasts. In addition, the flaming spirits had been attacking Feng Tianyi and did not have time to summon any more fiery beasts. This made things easier for them. However, when Lin Yi, Shen Qingyun, and the others raised their heads and saw the scene of the flaming spirits ganging up on Toyota, their expressions changed. Cough, cough. Boss Feng really deserves our respect. In order to protect us, he chose to be attacked himself. How noble is that? It seemed that with Shen Qingyun and Lin Yi around, Feng Yuanpeng and the others did not feel fear or panic. When they saw Feng Tianyi being attacked, they started to mock him. Sigh. Shen Qingyun shook her head and sighed. Something's not right. Only Lin Yi frowned slightly. He felt that something was wrong. The flaming spirits are only at level 58. They should not be Feng Tianyi's match. Why are they suppressing him? There must be something behind this. When his voice fell, Qing Yu and the rest were also astonished. Although the spiritual force of level 59 was only 1 level higher than that of level 58, the difference in strength was extremely large. At least, in terms of divine telekinesis, none of them were Feng Tianyi's match. There is only one origin in the 7 flaming spirits. TSK, I understand now. Feng Tianyi cannot find its real body, so he is in a passive position. End of chapter. Chapter 669. We can't even find the doppelganger. Feng Yuanpeng and the others were surprised. Isn't that simple? When it attacks, find the original body and hit it back. No, Lin Yi said in a deep voice. These 7 flaming spirits have the same origin. The core changes very quickly. This method can't find a real body. Hiss. What should we do? Frowning, Feng Yuanpeng and the others were surprised. Why go through so much trouble? Shen Qingyun suddenly said. His divine telekinesis doesn't have a sharp aura. We can only use strength to crush them. But the difference is not enough to crush them. As long as I attack, I can crush them all with 1 slash. This is also a good method. Lin Yi grinned and said, but Toyota, he might not be happy. He finally has a chance. He definitely won't want you to interfere. We can only help him a little. The rest will be left to him. That's true. Shen Qingyun nodded slightly and didn't say anything else. She just stared at the 7 flaming spirits in the air that were crazily beating Toyota. Seeing this scene, Feng Yuanpeng, Zheng Zhongyu, and the others looked at each other in surprise. According to their memory of Shen Qingyun, in this situation, Shen Qingyun would definitely make a decisive move and crush the 7 flaming spirits to save time. As for what the others thought, Shen Qingyun didn't care at all. However, they didn't expect that Shen Qingyun would actually listen to Lin Yi and not interfere. This caused them to be incomparably astonished as they began to size up Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun. Phew, got it. Lin Yi's eyes lit up. He suddenly thought a good idea. Shen Qingyun and the others turned their eyes to Lin Yi. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Lin Yi summoned the Tianyi fan, and the divine telekinesis in his body surged wildly. Toyota, I'll help you destroy their doppelgangers. Can you kill it? Lin Yi suddenly shouted. Hearing this, Toyota, who was being beaten, was ecstatic. Immediately, he frowned slightly. To be honest, he didn't want to rely on Lin Ye's help to defeat the Guardian. However, on second thought, even Shen Xinyan had to cooperate with Lin Yi to defeat the Guardian, so he didn't care. Junior brother Lin, as long as you can destroy its doppelgangers, I can definitely kill it. Toyota Yeez's eyes quickly. After being beaten by Toyota, he had a clear understanding of the flaming spirit's true strength. Although it had many tricks up its sleeves within the flames, its true strength was only at level 58 after all. It could not cause any real harm to him. Of course, if Toyota he had not broken through and was still at level 58, he would have been beaten half to death. Calm, calm. In the next moment, the wind howled. The divine telekinesis gushed out of the Tiani fan and turned into a gust of wind that blew towards the sky. Boom, boom, boom. The gust of wind swept up the flames in the sky. The 7 flaming spirits were blown into flames by the wind and could no longer maintain their human form. Shrill screams were heard. In an instant, the only thing left in the entire world was the flames. Apart from that, there was nothing else. Toyota, those flames are its main body. Lin Yi shouted softly. His eyes were fixed on the ball of flames. There was a fiery red gemstone in the middle. That gemstone is its core. Okay. Toyota, he saw the gemstone and immediately roared. The divine telekinesis wrapped around his body. With a boom, he shot into the sea of flames like a cannonball. Break it. The divine telekinesis bloomed on his fists. Toyota, he was already annoyed that he had been entangled for so long and that his underling had seen such a tragic scene. He roared in anger. With the divine telekinesis, he penetrated the protection of the flames and smashed into the gemstone burning with red flames. Crack! A crisp sound was heard. In the next moment, fine cracks appeared on the red gemstone. Crack! Crack! The red gemstone burst open. In an instant, the flames in the sky dissipated as if they had never appeared. That's it? Toyota, he could not help but be surprised when he saw this. In the previous 2 stages, after the protectors died, they would turn into their own elements and could be gathered again. Why did it directly collapse this time? In fact, in the previous 2 stages, after the protectors were defeated, their cores did not shatter. What Lin Yi did was to shatter their cores. However, this time, Lin Yi found the core in advance and let Toyota shatter it. That was why it dissipated. The flames in the sky dissipated and turned into a rich divine telekinesis aura floating in the air. Everyone was used to it. They chatted and laughed as they absorbed the divine telekinesis aura. This time, Lin Yi finally recovered to the 36th level of divine telekinesis. He was only a 4th level away from the 40th level of divine telekinesis. After the divine telekinesis aura was absorbed, the divine telekinesis imprint appeared in Lin Ye's body again. However, this time, the divine telekinesis imprint in Shen Xinyan's body did not appear. A surge of power bloomed. In Lin Ye's mind, the 5 spirits' divine technique appeared again. At the same time, a red light emerged and poured into Toyota Yi's body. With a grunt, Toyota Yi's aura skyrocketed again. At the same time, a bead appeared in his hand, flashing with red light. This is a divine telekinesis treasure. A divine telekinesis treasure. His good stuff. In an instant, Fang Yuanpeng and the others gathered around. Toyota, he was ecstatic. He did not expect the reward to be so rich after defeating the Guardian. Lin Yi was also very surprised. When he and Shen Xinyan defeated the Guardian earlier, they only received an upgrade and a cultivation method. There was no divine telekinesis treasure. A divine telekinesis treasure was different from a supreme sacred artifact. It was far more precious. Lin Yi would be lying if he said he was not tempted. Middle-grade divine telekinesis treasure. With a grin, Toyota, he felt his own realm again and was even more delighted. My strength has completely stabilized. Junior brother Lin. Next time, shall we work together? Lin Yi smiled and said, of course. After all, Shun Xingyun was not a divine telekinesis saint. Even if she defeated the Guardian, even if she had the divine telekinesis imprint, she would not gain any benefits. Naturally, she would not compete with Toyota. All right, let's continue to the next level. We have to speed up. As he spoke, Lin Yi and the others did not stop and rushed toward the light door in the air. Buzz. After the 9 of them left, the space, as before, underwent a strange change again. In a chapter. Chapter 670. Under the shade of the trees, Lin Yi and the other 8 looked at the towering trees beside them in astonishment. They're all trees, corresponding to the wood element. Lin Yi glanced at the surrounding trees and hesitated. If these giant trees are all demonic beasts formed from the power of divine sense, then we're in big trouble. What trouble? Feng Tianyi and the others looked around and grinned. There's so many giant trees. If they're all demonic beasts, then it'll be great. After absorbing their divine sense aura, our strength will rise to another level. No, how can it be that easy? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and said softly, "The wood element's defensive power is astonishing and its life force is tenacious. If it appears in the form of a giant tree and binds us, it'll be difficult for us to defeat it. It'll be even more difficult to break free. Set on fire. Won't that burn us?" Lin Yi said snappily. "Once the fire and the wood start burning, it'll be uncontrollable. At that time, I can't guarantee that you won't be burned to death. This is so scary." Raising their eyebrows, Feng Toyota and the others became serious. They had all experienced the power of Lin Ye's fire. They didn't want to be burned. If they couldn't withstand it, then it would be a tragedy. "Everyone, be careful. Check the surroundings." Lin Yi sighed. "I hope I'm overthinking. These giant trees are all dead." As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yi and the others started to look around. However, Lin Yi didn't think too much. After a while, countless small plants appeared around them under the giant trees. As soon as these plants appeared, they started moving. They either spat out liquid or extended their roots towards Lin Yi and the others. Fortunately, the giant trees didn't move. The roots moved extremely quickly. Before Lin Yi and the others could react, they were already entangled. Soon after, all kinds of liquids that emitted a fishy smell fell down from the sky. Qing Yu's and Shun Qingyun's expressions changed drastically. They immediately spread out their divine sense and blocked the air. Papa. However, when the colorful liquid landed on the power of divine sense, it corroded the invisible power of divine sense, making sizzling sounds. Qing Yu felt her entire body turn numb, and a 5-colored glow appeared on her face. "Not good. There's poison on the liquid." "What? It's poisonous?" Seeing this scene, Feng Tianyi and the others who were about to attack were stunned, not daring to summon their divine sense. What if they were also infected by the poison? Wouldn't they all be done for? Petty tricks. Lin Yi activated the Heavens Will fan. Buzz. The fan of heavens will trembled, and the power of divine sense instantly turned into a blazing flame. It appeared out of nowhere and suddenly burned all the poison in the air. Poochie, Poochie. In the blink of an eye, the poison was evaporated by the flame and disappeared in the air. However, Qing Yu did not recover from the evaporation of the poison. Her expression turned even uglier, and her breathing quickened. "Damn it, this poison is so terrifying." Sensing this, Lin Yi and the others frowned. Poochie. All of a sudden, the roots that were entangling them gradually increased in strength. Lin Yi snorted coldly and activated the Heavens Will fan again. In an instant, the flames in the sky dissipated, and the power of divine sense turned into golden blades that filled the sky. "Break it!" Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. As his voice fell, the blades that filled the sky fell like raindrops, slashing through Lin Yi and the others. Feng Tianyi and the others were horrified and hurriedly closed their eyes. In the next moment, the roots that were entangling them were cut into pieces by the golden blades. Crackle, crackle. After the roots were broken, they quickly retreated. Lin Yi's expression changed, and he hurriedly withdrew the heavens will fan. Looking at the various plants that suddenly appeared around him, his expression was particularly solemn. Damn it, our divine sense doesn't have any other elemental power. What should we do? Feng Tianyi and the others frowned. At this time, they could also see it. In order to pass this stage, one had to possess both metal and fire elemental powers. The fire element could evaporate the poison, while the metal element could quickly cut down all the giant trees. However, it was useless even if they could see it. Among them, other than Lin Yi, the rest of their divine sense did not have any elemental power at all. This made them rather surprised. Normally, the divine sense of an ordinary divine sense cultivator was formless and selfless. Why was this set up in the ruins? Could it be that they had to comprehend it out of thin air? Gulp, gulp, poochie, poochie. Subtle sounds constantly rang out, one after another. When Lin Yi and the others looked over, their faces turned pale as they sucked in a breath of cold air. Countless plants appeared, and like animals, they kept wriggling towards Lin Yi and the others. At this time, even Lin Yi was a little uncertain. Buzz, buzz. Just as Lin Yi was extremely nervous, he suddenly felt that there was a sharp aura in this space. Wait. Suddenly feeling the sharp aura, Lin Yi's mind was like being struck by lightning, and he was stunned in place. A thought appeared in his mind. Chi-chi. More and more plants came closer, and Lin Yi and the others were surrounded. For a moment, Feng Tianyi and the others were in despair. Even Shen Qingyun pulled out her long saber and stared nervously at the plants. Plants of wood had extremely tenacious vitality. Other than flames and sharp metal, there was no other power that could cause them harm in a short period of time. What was more terrifying was that there were too many of them. Even if Lin Yi and the others were powerful, there was no way to kill them in a short period of time, unless each of them could comprehend the metal element and integrate the metal element into their divine thought. Oh, so that's it. After figuring everything out, Lin Yi chuckled. Looking at the plants, his eyes were no longer surprised, but full of peace. What's the situation? Junior brother Lin, have you thought a way to deal with it? Hearing Lin Yi's sudden laughter, Shen Qingyun, Feng Tianyi, and the others were shocked and immediately ecstatic. They knew that Lin Yi would never do anything meaningless. That's right. Lin Yi chuckled out loud. Feng Tianyi, Qingwei, do you trust me? Nonsense. How could we come here if we didn't trust you? Feng Tianyi immediately scolded with a smile. What do you want us to do? Lin Yi glanced at Feng Tianyi, Feng Yuanpeng, and the others. Seeing the determination in their eyes, he immediately smiled and said, It's very simple. Give me all your strength. As long as I can temporarily restore my original strength, dealing with these monsters formed by divine thought is as easy as flipping my hand. As his voice fell, Lin Yi's aura suddenly rose. Like a god, he looked at everyone indifferently, causing everyone to feel a chill in their hearts. Even the plants stopped moving and began to tremble. End of chapter. Chapter 671. In fact, other than the initial illusion, the rest of the stages in this relic were to allow the challengers to comprehend the power of elements at the moment of life and death. To be precise, it was to allow them to comprehend the power of elements and the power of divine sense. Almost everyone had some comprehension of the power of elements. Many people could even cultivate a domain and had a high understanding of the elements. However, no one could fuse the power of divine sense with the elements. The purpose of this relic was to allow people to comprehend that power at the moment of life and death. Unfortunately, the person who set up the relic did not expect Lin Yi to have the heaven will fan. This way, there was no need for anyone to comprehend, and they could pass through the relic. After Lin Yi thought of this, he originally wanted to spend more time to let Feng Tianyi and the others comprehend. However, on second thought, time was of the essence. If he missed the time, his power of elements could not recover, and the ninefold space would dry up, and he would be finished. The ninefold space was a small matter. If Auspicious died, it would be a huge matter. Therefore, Lin Yi could only choose to suppress this and quickly pass through this heavenly saint relic. Boom, boom, boom. His aura continued to rise. Lin Yi stared at the plants indifferently as the heaven will fan in his hand flickered. Seeing this, Feng Tianyi and the others were stunned. They did not expect that Lin Yi, who was seriously injured, could still release such an aura. Phew, I believe you. Qing Yu exclaimed softly as she endured the corrosion of the poison in her body. She suddenly sat down cross-legged and her hands fluttered, making extremely complicated gestures. In an instant, the remaining power of divine sense in Qing Yu's body surged out and poured into Lin Ye's body. However, Qing Yu was already poisoned. Now that the power of divine sense had dissipated, the poison started to wreak havoc in her body, crazily corroding her meridians. Oomph! With a muffled groan, Qing Yu clenched her teeth. Her body trembled, but she did not make a sound. Sigh. Sensing this, Lin Yi sighed softly. The heavenly soul, jade, pendant floated out of his body and flew to Qing Yu. Infuse your spirit energy into the jade pendant. It can protect you. Once I've dealt with these plants, I'll heal you. With Qing Yu's divine sense power, Lin Yi's entire person's aura became much stronger again. Looking around, Toyota, Yi, and the others were still hesitating. Lending one's divine sense to another person was extremely dangerous. If Lin Yi was unwilling to return it, they would have no choice but to turn him into a cripple. Furthermore, the divine sense that was lent to Lin Yi and returned to him would contain the aura of other powers, which could very well lead to an unstable foundation. However, after a short moment, the plants reacted. They wiggled again and approached them. At this moment, the expressions of Feng Tian, Yi, and the others changed slightly. They did not dare to hesitate any longer. They immediately roared and sat down cross-legged. The divine sense power in their bodies surged out. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The formless power of spirit sense squeezed the space. That power was incomparably terrifying. Even the plants were frightened and took a few steps back. Of course, the divine sense power was only in its most basic form. They were only afraid and would not be destroyed. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. However, when the surging divine sense power poured into Lin Ye's body like a river, the sharp divine sense power quietly bloomed. Boom, boom. Like a thunderbolt, Lin Ye's divine sense power suddenly recovered to rank 57. Ha ha! In the midst of his laughter, Lin Yi squinted his eyes and fully unleashed his divine sense power to activate the Tian-Yi fan. Swoosh! The Tian-Yi fan shone with a golden light. In the next moment, the divine sense power in the sky turned into flashing golden blades, circling in the sky in an orderly manner. The sharp metal aura whistled continuously. The solemnity of metal, invincible. Break for me. With a soft shout, Lin Yi waved his right hand. In an instant, the endless sharp divine sense power was like a sharp blade, raining down on the plants in the sky. Poof, poof, Mournful screams continued to ring out. The plants were almost defenseless. They were penetrated by the divine sense power and turned into divine sense power in the sky. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The divine sense power continued to fall, causing the entire space to explode. Feng Tianyi and the others quickly closed their eyes. When they opened their eyes again, they could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. They saw that the surrounding giant trees and plants had all collapsed, turning into divine sense power in the sky. Hiss! It's all settled? Feng Tianyi, Feng Yuanpeng, and the others looked at each other with their mouths agape. Their faces were filled with disbelief. Oh, there's more. Lin Yi chuckled and formed a seal with both hands. In the next moment, all the divine sense power gathered and turned into a giant sword, floating in Lin Ye's hand. Holding the giant sword formed by the divine sense power, Lin Yi did not hesitate and immediately swung it. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Every time he swung it, a sharp golden sword chi swept out. It had an imposing aura that could sweep across the world. Lin Yi swung it a total of 6 times, front, back, left, right, and up. Buzz. The six-sword chi flew out in front of the shocked eyes of Feng Tianyi and the others. A moment later, the entire world trembled violently. Countless divine sense power surged wildly from afar. Not long after, the place where Lin Yi and the others were was turned into a sea of divine sense power. Hiss, isn't this too terrifying? With just 2 swings of the sword, he can kill all the demonic beasts in the checkpoint. Gulp. Seeing this, Feng Tianyi and the others could not help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. When they looked at Lin Yi again, their eyes were filled with respect. Although they did not take Lin Ye's true strength to heart, they were extremely impressed by Lin Ye's many tricks. If they really fought, they might not be Lin Ye's match. At this time, they finally understood why the arrogant little she-devil was so obedient in front of Lin Yi. Narrowing his eyes, Lin Yi sensed for a moment. After confirming that there were no other auras in this space, he dispersed his own aura and returned all the divine sense power. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Feng Tianyi and the others quickly retracted their divine sense power. They looked at Lin Yi with astonishment. Lin Yi did not care about them. He walked in front of Qin Yu and used the remaining divine sense power to activate the Heavenwell Fan. In an instant, the surging wood aura, mixed with the power of life, surged into Qin Yu's body. With the power of life, the venom was like snow meeting the sun, quickly dissipating. Qin Yu's face became redder. In a chapter. Chapter 672. Hiss. The poison was removed so easily. The corners of Feng Tianyi and the others' mouths twitched, and their faces were filled with disbelief. What kind of joke was this? The power of the venom had terrified them, and they were afraid of being contaminated. However, in Lin Ye's hands, it dissipated instantly, which shocked them. Could it be that Lin Ye's strength had surpassed theirs by a lot? They're poison after all. Lin Yi chuckled. The power of life can devour them directly. All right, let's absorb these divine consciousness auras first. Then I'll tell you what's going on. Rolling his eyes, Lin Yi saw that Feng Tianyi and the others' eyes were filled with confusion. He immediately sat down cross-legged and began to absorb the divine consciousness auras. This time, although he had borrowed the power of Feng Tianyi and the others' divine consciousness, it was still quite a burden for him. If it weren't for his strong sea of consciousness and the protection of the ninefold space, the influx of so much divine consciousness power could have turned him into a fool. Even so, Lin Yi still had a headache. Seeing that Lin Yi was absorbing the divine consciousness auras so quickly, Feng Tianyi and the others looked at each other and bit their lips. It wasn't good to ask again, so they all began to absorb the divine consciousness auras. What a joke! Lin Ye's absorption speed was extremely fast. If Lin Yi absorbed all of it, what would they do? Qin Yu was even more unwilling to miss out. Although the venom had been wiped out, her body was still very weak and needed to be replenished. As a result, under everyone's greedy absorption, the divine sense aura in the entire space was completely absorbed by Lin Yi and the others in no time at all. Buzz! In Lin Ye's body, the divine consciousness imprint appeared again and floated in the air. Buzz! Another scroll of the 5 spirits divine technique appeared in Lin Ye's mind. However, what puzzled Lin Yi was that other than the 5 spirits divine technique, there were still no other rewards. Lin Ye's divine consciousness power also quietly recovered to level 36. This caused Lin Yi to frown slightly. Not only did he not have a spiritual sense cardinal treasure, but his recovery speed was also so slow. At present, he had already passed 4 of the 5 elements: wood, wind, water, and fire. Only earth or metal was left. Normally, the 5 elements are metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. However, under special circumstances, some people would remove metal and add wind. The sharpness of the wind was even greater than that of metal. It could even have the 100 transformations attribute. The first 4 elemental ruins had only allowed him to recover to tier 36. The last one might not even allow him to recover to tier 37. He was still some distance away from reaching level 40. This made Lin Yi extremely puzzled. If he couldn't recover to level 40 within half a month, then auspicious sign would be in danger. Phew, I hope this ruin won't end so easily. With a low sigh, Lin Yi pulled himself together. Before he could speak, Feng Toy walked in front of him and patted him on the shoulder. He whispered, "Junior brother Lin, don't be depressed. You've received 4 rewards in a row, but you missed the spiritual sense cardinal treasure. I know you're in despair. It's okay. Maybe next time, you'll get a spiritual sense cardinal treasure." Ahem. Hearing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but cough. He looked at Feng Toy in confusion. "What's going on? I'm worried about recovering my divine consciousness power. Why is it related to the spiritual sense cardinal treasure?" Although the spiritual sense cardinal treasure was very precious, Lin Yi had the heavens will fan. He didn't care much about it. However, Feng Toy and the others didn't know that when they saw Lin Yi's mood drop, they thought that Lin Yi was worried because he didn't get a spiritual sense cardinal treasure. "Junior brother Lin, your luck is really bad. For times, all the rewards were to increase your strength. You didn't get a spiritual sense cardinal treasure. This is so frustrating." Fang Yuanpeng and the other sighed. If Lin Yi and the others had gotten more rewards, they might have been able to get a share. Therefore, they were very puzzled. "Ahem, it's okay," Lin Yi said in a low voice. "Phew, if there are no accidents, there should only be 2 levels left in this ruin. One level is for the metal element or the earth element. The other level should be for the 5 elements. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth." Feng Toy rubbed his nose and suddenly said, "That's not right. I remember that the second level is for wind and thunder, not the 5 elements. There's no fixed saying for the 5 elements. If it's just the 5 elements, wind can be among them." Lin Yi said in a low voice, "Actually, the levels of this ruin were designed for teams of many people. Generally speaking, each person can only be proficient in 1 element. At most, there are 2 elements, and they have to be 2 elements that complement each other. However, these levels can only be defeated by elements that counter each other. If the trial taker doesn't have that element, they will be trapped in here forever until they die. I think it's the same for the metal element or earth element. We need to have the power to counter that element to pass the level." But Feng Toy, Fang Yuanpeng, and the others looked at each other and frowned. He said in a low voice, "But generally speaking, elements are elements, and the power of divine sense is divine sense. Those things can only be harmed by divine sense. Even if we understand the power of elements, we can't hurt them. That's right. Therefore, if a normal person enters this ruin, only death awaits them." Lin Yi said with a grin, "If I didn't happen to get the heavens will fan, which can transform divine sense into various elements, I'm afraid we would have been entangled to death by the Blood Lady." "That's true." Feng Toy and the others frowned when they heard that. They suddenly had a feeling that something was wrong, but they didn't know what was wrong. "Then, for the next level, I'll still give you all the divine sense and transform it into something that can counter them." Feng Toy said with a grin, "Junior brother Lin, if that's the case, if we can get another divine sense treasure, can you convert it into points and give us some? This time we've helped a lot, but we didn't get anything." Okay. Lin Ye's goal was only to restore the strength of his divine sense. He didn't care about things like divine sense supreme treasures or points. Not to mention, Lin Yi was sure that the reward he would receive would most likely be the 5 spirits divine law. Why go through so much trouble? If I can get a divine sense treasure in the next level, I'll give it to you. You can split it among yourselves," Lin Yi said with a smile. "Of course, if it's a treasure that can restore the power of divine sense, I won't give it to you. I'll only give you points." He, good, straightforward. Hearing Lin Ye's words, Feng Toy, Fang Yuanpeng, and Zheng Zhongyu were overjoyed and prayed together. This trip to the ruin was full of danger. They had all put in a lot of effort. If in the end, they only improved their strength and didn't get a single treasure, it would be unfair. End of chapter. Chapter 673. After the agreement was made, Lin Yi and the rest did not waste any time and immediately flew towards the light door in the sky. In the next moment, when they opened their eyes again, they had already appeared on a vast piece of land. As far as the eye could see, it was all soil. The endless mountain range was continuous, but it was barren. There was no vegetation at all. There was only endless soil. This is the power of soil. Stomping the ground under his feet, Lin Yi grinned and said, "Obviously, the soil is formed by divine thought. Wait a moment, the soil should break out of the soil. I wonder what is hidden in the soil." Seeing Lin Yi stomping his feet, Feng Tianyi and the rest also stomped their feet and were extremely curious. Rumble. In an instant, the entire ground shook as if it was alarmed. Lin Yi and the rest quickly floated up and looked down. They saw that the ground was shaking and the ground was cracking. Boom! Suddenly, some of the soil changed shape and turned into dozens of huge stone men. They were dozens of feet tall, and as soon as they took shape, they slapped their huge palms towards Lin Yi and the rest. "It's the stone men." Lin Yi and the rest grinned. They did not expect this. Buzz! Shen Xingyun took a step forward, and the long saber in her hand flashed. A ray of saber light broke through the air and instantly split the stone men into pieces of soil. "Come on, everyone inject your divine thought into my body," Lin Yi said softly. In the next moment, Feng Tianyi, Qing Yu, and the rest sat cross-legged in the void and injected their divine thought into Lin Ye's body again. Ha! Boom, boom, boom. Divine thought surged. Soon, Lin Ye's aura was restored to rank 57 divine thought. Of course, his rank 57 divine thought was more powerful than an ordinary rank 59 divine thought. In addition, his divine thought had merged with many cultivation skills and had additional destructive power. "Since it's earth, I'll need wood to restrain you." Narrowing his eyes, Lin Yi separated a portion of his divine sense to protect everyone, while the rest of his divine sense poured into the heavens will fan. Buzz! The fan of heavens will flickered, and in the next moment, the shadow of a jade-green tree appeared, covering the sky and covering the earth. "Ha! Fall for me." With a soft roar, the tree phantoms formed by the power of spiritual sense floated down and landed on the ground. As soon as they landed, the tree phantoms took root in the ground. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In the next moment, the trees frantically absorbed the power of the earth, turning it into their own nutrients. Buzz! Strange fluctuations constantly appeared. In just a few breaths of time, those trees seemed to have sped up as they rapidly grew. After the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, the mountain range that filled the sky and the earth were already covered by towering trees. The soil on the ground had dried up and cracked, almost dying. What a tyrannical power! Seeing this scene, Feng Tianyi and the others frowned, extremely surprised. I didn't expect the restraint of the 5 elements to be so terrifying. Earth itself is especially thick, and almost everywhere is covered in soil. It's very difficult to break through and cause damage to them. I didn't expect them to dry up so much under the power of wood. The restraint between the elements is in accordance with the laws of heaven and earth. This phenomenon is very normal. Lin Yi sighed. However, although the 5 elements reinforce and restrain each other, if the difference in strength is too great, it's useless. For example, water restrains fire and can extinguish it. However, if the fire is too strong and there's only a little water, the water will be evaporated by the fire. Therefore, one's own strength is the most important. That's right. Hearing this, Feng Tianyi and the others, who originally wanted to carefully study the power of the elements, suddenly woke up, and their foreheads were full of sweat. They rejoiced. Fortunately, Lin Yi said that sentence. Otherwise, if they were to indulge in studying the power of the elements and neglect their own cultivation, the gains would not make up for the losses. Junior brother Lin, are we just going to wait like this? Looking down and seeing that the giant tree was still absorbing the power of the earth, Feng Tianyi and the others said hesitantly, "I don't know if the guardians will appear after we absorb all their power? Probably not. Lin Yi said in a deep voice. Previously, we released the inner core step by step before releasing the Guardians. Now, we directly extracted the core power of the entire area and destroyed it. The Guardians will not appear again. Phew, that's good too. The speed will be much faster. Feng Tianyi and the others nodded slightly and did not think much of it. On the contrary, they were happy. Previously, they had spent a lot of time breaking through, and they also wanted to break through as soon as possible. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Suddenly, the earth trembled, and all the earth cracked open. It was incomparably dry, and the power contained in it collapsed. The towering giant tree grew to a height of dozens of feet, and it was especially dense. Boom! A violent explosion suddenly sounded, and in the next moment, the entire space's soil and earth burst open, turning into a sky full of divine consciousness aura. At this time, Lin Yi and the others realized that after the ground collapsed, there was nothing under their feet. Continue to absorb the divine consciousness aura. After collecting the towering tree formed by the divine consciousness, Lin Yi dispersed the power and returned the divine consciousness power to the others. Then Lin Yi began to absorb the divine consciousness aura frantically. After 2 hours, the divine consciousness aura was completely absorbed. Lin Yi's divine consciousness power still had not recovered to level 37 and was only at the mid-stage of level 36. Even if the divine consciousness imprint gave him another upgrade, it would be difficult to recover to level 37. Buzz! The divine consciousness imprint appeared, and this time, it seemed that the prayers of Feng Tianyi and the others had come true. In addition to the 5 spirits' divine art, a shield fell and floated in front of Lin Yi. In addition, the upgrade of the divine consciousness power was a huge surprise for Lin Yi. It had actually recovered to level 47. This divine consciousness treasure. In an instant, Feng Tianyi and the others were ecstatic, and they all turned to look at Lin Yi's face. Although they had come to an agreement earlier, what kind of treasure was a divine sense treasure? It was enough to turn brothers against each other. Therefore, Feng Tianyi and the others were not sure if Lin Yi would give a shield to them. Ha ha ha, looks like you're really lucky. Lin Yi did not hesitate. With a flip of his right hand, the shield flew out and landed steadily in front of Feng Tianyi. As for who the shield would belong to, it was up to Feng Tianyi to worry about. End of chapter. Chapter 674. Junior brother Lin, Toyota, E, and the others looked at Lin Yi in shock. They couldn't believe that Lin Yi would just throw a spiritual, supreme treasure to them. The divine sense treasure was more precious than a supreme, sacred weapon. If Lin Yi had hesitated or asked for some benefits, they would have accepted it. However, Lin Yi had given it to them without even thinking about it, which made them extremely touched. Heh, I've already received enough benefits. I'll give you this divine, cardinal treasure. Lin Yi chuckled like a spring breeze, blowing in the hearts of Toyota, E, and the others, making them feel very grateful. Well, junior brother Lin, if you have any problems in the outer yard, just tell us. When you are in the inner yard, we will protect you. Toyota E grinned and said, then I won't stand on ceremony with you. After that, Toyota E, Feng Yuanpeng, and the others gathered together and began to discuss the ownership of the shield. Lin Yi was sensing the 5 spirits' divine technique in his heart. Sure enough, after passing these elemental levels, Lin Yi had received a total of 5 sets of 5 spirits' divine technique. They were water, fire, wind, earth, and wood. However, in the wind scroll and wood scroll, there were 2 types of power. This made Lin Yi quite surprised. After hesitating for a moment, Lin Yi suddenly had a thought and controlled the 5 spirits' divine technique to merge together. Buzz! Almost at the moment when the 5 manuals merged together, a strange power suddenly rippled out from Lin Yi's body. That power was particularly special. Almost instantly, it pushed away Shin Qingyun, Qingyue, Toyota E, and the others were beside Lin Yi. In the next moment, flames, water, wind, thunder, heavenly gold, green wood, and thick earth all appeared and revolved around Lin Ye's body. Those elements merged and repelled each other, as if forming a small world. In Lin Ye's mind, Biluo, who was cultivating, suddenly opened her eyes, and a look of surprise appeared on her face. Hiss! He actually activated the power of law. Biluo rolled her eyes and clenched her teeth. Even if she had to exhaust all her energy, she still channeled the energy of the chaotic sacred tree to Lin Yi. Buzz! Wong! Buzz! It was as if the primal chaos divine tree's power had affected those elements. The power between them grew stronger and stronger. At the same time, in Lin Ye's mind, a sentence was like a thunderclap, shaking and rolling like a great bell. Under the moistness of water, there is no hole it cannot enter. Above the flame of fire, there is nothing it cannot burn. Above the growth of wood, there is nothing it cannot break. Above the solemnity of metal, there is nothing it cannot break. Above the nourishment of earth, there is nothing it cannot melt. Above the devastation of wind, there is nothing it cannot break. The power of elements tumbled and surged, constantly evolving in Lin Ye's mind, forming a world of its own. Boom! Suddenly, there was another explosion. All the elemental power in front of Lin Yi exploded, erupting with a powerful shock wave. Lin Yi slowly woke up. In his body, there was a lot more understanding of the power of elements. When he opened his eyes, Lin Ye's eyes were in a daze. He could not believe that he had so easily comprehended everything in the Five Spirits Divine technique. It had to be said that the chaotic sacred tree, origin source, heavenly water, and Lin Ye's talent were not low to begin with. With these three added together, Lin Ye's talent was even more terrifying. Junior brother Lin. Not far away, Feng Tianyi and the others looked at Lin Yi in surprise and murmured, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." Lin Yi grinned and said, "I just happened to comprehend something. Why do I feel that, compared to before, you're much stronger now?" Feng Tianyi looked at Lin Yi carefully and said in a low voice, "Although you haven't broken through and your divine sense hasn't recovered, I still feel that you're more dangerous." "Ha, it might be an illusion." Lin Yi chuckled. "You haven't finished discussing? There's no light door here. In my opinion, the ruins are about to end." Cough, cough. Hand a shield to Zheng Zhongyu. Feng Tianyi grinned and said, "I wonder what's going to happen next." "Phew, although we didn't get many treasures in this ruin, I'm very satisfied with the increase in my strength. Yes, I've broken through to the peak of level 57 divine sense. After I go back, I'll be able to break through in about half a month in seclusion. Before I came, my divine sense was only at level 56 and had not stabilized. This increase is equivalent to 1 or 2 years of cultivation." Fang Yuanpeng and the others were very satisfied. Although they did not get any treasures, the rapid increase in their strength still made them excited. In just a few days, they had increased their strength by a few years of cultivation. This was already worth it. There should be one last stage. Lin Yi touched his nose, feeling a little embarrassed. These ruins could allow them to comprehend the ability to combine elemental power and divine sense. Unfortunately, he had used the divine wolf fan to pass through the ruins, causing Feng Tianyi and the others to lose the opportunity to comprehend. If there's one last stage, we might be able to get some treasures. Feng Tianyi and the others were happy. Xingyu was also quite happy. With the help of her divine sense, she had also broken through to level 58 divine sense. This strength was almost the peak strength in the outer court. Other than the top 10 on the transforming saint list, no one was her match. Buzz, buzz, buzz. All of a sudden, the space beneath Lin Yi and the others began to change. The yellow light surged and turned into a light ball, condensing into a light pillar. Buzz! In the void, 4 light pillars of different colors appeared in the other 4 directions at the same time, as if they had descended from the sky and connected together. These pillars of light seemed to be the 4 stages that we've passed before. The 4 light pillars respectively flickered with flame, wind and thunder, blood and water, and greenwood. When they connected together, the entire space trembled. The 5 different colors of light reflected each other, shining brightly. In the next moment, in the flickering light, a large hall appeared. That large hall was golden and dazzling, containing a strong power. That large hall can't be the real ruins, right? There must be treasures inside. Seeing that large hall, Feng Tianyi and the others were all excited. Who knows, there might be divine sense treasures inside. As expected of the heavenly saint ruins. It's too powerful. There are so many opportunities. The improvement in these few days is almost catching up to my past 2 to 3 years of cultivation. Everyone was ecstatic. Immediately, under Lin Ye's lead, they flew toward the large hall. The large hall was magnificent, quietly floating in the air without any restrictions. When Lin Yi and the others entered, they didn't encounter any obstacles. Inside the large hall, it was golden and dazzling. There were 5 pillars standing, and each pillar was engraved with an element. Hiss, why are there no wind and thunder elements? End of chapter. Chapter 675. Lin Yi and the others carefully looked at the pillars in the hall. Sure enough, the pillars in the hall had the power of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth, but not the power of wind and thunder. By the way, there seems to be some writing on these 5 pillars. Shun Qinyun suddenly pointed to a pillar and said, "This pillar has the shape of a water droplet carved on it, and there is some writing behind it." Yes, it's true. Feng Tianyi and the others quickly gathered around and took a closer look. They were all surprised. It's on this pillar too. Water something something. It's blank behind it. It seems that we have to solve the problem of the writing on this pillar to find out the other questions. Everyone looked at the pillar curiously. However, Lin Ye's eyebrows were tightly knitted together. He took a step forward and focused his gaze. When he saw the words on the pillar, his expression became incomparably strange. Those words happened to be the words that appeared in his mind when he was comprehending the 5 spirits' divine skill. It seems that only by obtaining the 5 spirits' divine skill can we open this hall. Touching his nose, Lin Yi immediately said, "Step back. I know how to fill in the words on it." As he spoke, Lin Yi reached out and wrote on the pillar with a water droplet carved on it. Under the surprised gaze of Shun Qinyun, Feng Tianyi, and the others. Under the moistness of water, there is no hole that cannot be penetrated. Buzz. The words appeared, and a white mist appeared. The pillar suddenly automatically moved a few steps back, and was stuck to the side. Inside, soft water vapor rippled out, and it was very comfortable. Seeing this scene, Shun Qinyun and the others were stunned. They looked at the pillar, and then looked at Lin Yi. Their mouths were wide open, and they could not close them. They could not believe that Lin Yi even knew this. Lin Yi can't be a disciple from a peak first-class family, can he? He knows so much. Elements, 5 elements, divine sense power. And he has a divine sense cardinal treasure and a supreme sacred artifact. Toyota, and the others pursed their lips. The more they thought about it, the more they doubted Lin Ye's identity. However, Lin Yi ignored them and continued to walk towards the next pillar. The second pillar was engraved with flames, just like the sequence of the passage. Water, fire, wood, metal, earth. Under the moistness of water, there's no hole it can't enter. Above the flames of fire, there's nothing it can't burn. Above the growth of wood, there's nothing it can't break. Above the solemnity of metal, there's nothing it can't break. Above the nourishment of earth, there's nothing it can't melt. Hiss, why does my heart tremble when I see these words? Gulp. The sound of gulping was heard. Feng Toyota and the others looked at the words on the pillar, but their hearts suddenly jumped. Not long after, the power of divine sense surged out of Feng Tianyi and the others, causing their domains to tremble. In his confusion, Feng Tianyi's expression changed drastically, and he shouted, "Quick, everyone, hurry up and cultivate. This must be a great opportunity." After saying that, Feng Tianyi immediately sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate. Boom! The moment Feng Tianyi sat down, The domain behind him had already erupted with scorching flames, which corresponded with the power of divine sense and intertwined with each other. Seeing this, Qing Yu, Feng Yuanpeng, and the others no longer hesitated and immediately sat down. Boom, boom, boom. In the next moment, the power of the domain appeared behind them and intertwined with their divine sense. The hall trembled, and the power of the five elements suddenly erupted and poured into the bodies of Feng Tianyi, Qing Yu, and the others. Lin Yi and Shun Qingyan saw this scene and were extremely surprised. Phew, I felt guilty earlier for causing them to lose an opportunity. Lin Yi chuckled. It seems that I have to compensate them again here. What a pity, what a pity. Glancing at Shun Qingyan, Lin Yi sighed again. What's a pity? Shun Qingyan blinked, extremely curious. It's a pity that you're not a divine sense cultivator. Otherwise, your harvest in this relic would not be lower than mine. It's okay. Shun Qingyan smiled. The improvement that the divine sense imprint gave me is already very good. I have a hunch that I'm not far from breaking through to the great sage realm. Ha ha, congratulations. Lin Yi chuckled. Also, I didn't come to this relic for treasures in the first place. I just wanted an interesting adventure. Shun Qingyun tilted her head and smiled. This relic is very interesting. I like it very much. If there are such interesting relics in the future, you must call me again. Okay. Lin Yi's lips curled up slightly. Looking at Shun Qingyun, a strange thought suddenly appeared in his mind. However, before he could carefully ponder over that thought, Feng Tianyi and the others ended their cultivation. Ha ha ha. I can't believe I've also learned to merge my divine sense with the elements. Feng Tianyi jumped up and waved his right hand. His divine sense immediately turned into a flaming dragon, roaring endlessly. Not only Feng Tianyi, but Qing Yu, Feng Yuanpeng, and everyone else had comprehended it, especially Qing Yu, who had comprehended two types of power. Seeing this, Lin Yi felt even more fortunate. The faster their strength improved, the safer the relic would be in the future. For some reason, Lin Yi felt that this heavenly saint relic was not so simple to solve. It was even possible that this relic was not left behind by a heavenly saint realm expert, but an even more powerful absolute saint, or even a peak Saint King realm expert. How could an ordinary heavenly saint comprehend several types of elemental power and merge them with his divine sense? Buzz! As Feng Tianyi and the others finished their cultivation, the light in the main hall did not dissipate. Instead, it shone even more brightly. The main hall, the light pillars, and even the bodies of Feng Tianyi and the others rippled with the light of their respective elements. Could it be that there are more treasures? When Toyota saw this, he blinked his eyes and yelled out. Not far away, Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun's mouths twitched. They had already obtained too many treasures in this trip to the relic. If there were more treasures, wouldn't this relic be a huge loss? Rumble. The hall trembled, and all of a sudden, space crumbled. 7 flickering shadows flew out from the crack in space, circling around Lin Yi and the others. What's this? It seems to be the aura of a divine sense treasure. Feng Tianyi swallowed his saliva and looked at the light in a daze. Another divine sense treasure? What kind of luck is this? Another divine, cardinal treasure? And there are so many of them? His mouth twitching, Lin Yi looked at Feng Tianyi in shock. If not for the fact that Feng Tianyi was difficult to obtain, he would have suspected that Feng Tianyi was the legendary god of luck. In a chapter. Chapter 676. This, Feng Toyoi was also stunned. He immediately laughed out loud and said, "There's nothing we can do about it. When luck comes, we can't stop it." As soon as he finished speaking, the 7 rays of light rapidly rotated and immediately fell into the hands of Lin Yi, Shun Qingyun, and the others who did not get the treasure earlier. Only Feng Toyoi and Zheng Zhongyu did not get it. Feng Toyoi's smile came to an abrupt halt, and he could not help but cough awkwardly. He had just said that he was lucky, but the treasure chose someone else. Was slap in the face. Ha ha ha. The others were stunned for a moment and laughed out loud. Then, they stretched out their hands, and the rays of light in front of them dissipated, turning into treasures and falling into their hands. Ha ha! It's really a spiritual sense treasure. TSK, this heavenly saint relic is really awesome. It's the right place. Everyone was extremely excited and kept the spiritual sense treasure like it was a treasure. Only Shen Qingyun was looking at the spirit sense cardinal treasure in her hand with a confused expression. It was a necklace that was still shining with a faint blue light and contained a gentle power. However, Shen Qingyun was not a spiritual sense cultivator. Other than the saber essence, Shen Qingyun could not control other powers, not even the saint power. Therefore, the spiritual sense treasure was useless to her. As for Lin Yi, he got a fiery red disc. The disc was full of flames, and a phoenix was carved on it. It contained a blazing power. Frowning slightly, Lin Yi began to explore the effect of the disc. Junior brother Lin. Shen Qingyun suddenly handed the necklace in her hand to Lin Yi and said softly, "I'm not a spiritual sense cultivator. It's useless to me. You can have it." Hearing this, Lin Yi was stunned and blinked his eyes. Not only was Lin Yi stunned, but Qing Yu, Toyota Yi, Fang Yuanpeng, and the others were also stunned. Their mouths were agape as they looked at Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun in astonishment. The divine sense treasure was a divine sense treasure from the heavenly saint relic. It was far more powerful than a supreme sacred weapon. However, Shen Qingyun gave it to Lin Yi directly. Wasn't this a little too much? Even if it was a family member, very few people would give away such a precious item. Even if they didn't need it, they could exchange it for points or saint stones to get what they needed. Therefore, Qing Yu and the others were rather shocked. Being stared at by everyone, Shen Qingyun's cheeks inexplicably reddened. Soon after, she angrily said, "Why are all of you looking at me like that?" Cough, cough. Toyota E and the others did not dare to disobey Shen Qingyun. They quickly turned around and began to laugh. "Look, what a beautiful night. Yes, there are no clouds for thousands of miles, and the sky is as clear as jade." Hearing that, Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun's mouths suddenly twitched. Obviously, that group of people was still paying attention to them. This made Shen Qingyun rather shy. It was rare for her ears to turn red, and her cheeks were hot. Cough, cough. Coughing lightly, Lin Yi took the necklace and smiled. "Senior sister Shen, is this necklace beautiful?" "It's quite beautiful." Shen Qingyun nodded slightly. The necklace flickered with an icy blue radiance. Coupled with the gentle ripples of water vapor, it looked especially beautiful. "This necklace is so beautiful." Lin Yi chuckled and hung the necklace in front of Shen Qingyun's chest. He whispered, "Besides senior sister Shen, who else is worthy of it?" Hearing that, Shen Qingyun rolled her eyes at Lin Yi. However, she covered the necklace with both hands, and her heartbeat quietly sped up. Only you know how to talk. If you don't want it, just say it." Shen Qingyun glanced at Lin Yi and smiled sweetly. "You're right. You're so ugly that you definitely don't deserve it. Then I'll reluctantly accept it." Not far away, Toda Yi, Fang Yuanpeng, and the others were dumbfounded. "Brother, sister, don't drag us into your flirting, okay? We're not ugly." Swoosh, swoosh. After Lin Yi and the others put away their divine sense treasures, the space crack in the air gradually stabilized and opened up a passage. "It seems that this should be the way out of here." Frowning slightly, Lin Yi said in surprise, "It's over so soon. This is fast." Toyota Yi grinned and said, "If it weren't for our good luck that you have a treasure that can transform the divine sense into various elemental attributes, I'm afraid we would have died long ago. Yes, this relic is really terrifying. Fortunately, you and senior sister Shen were there at the beginning. Otherwise, I'm afraid we would still be in the illusion." Fang Yuanpeng, Zhang Zhongyu, and the others looked at each other with lingering fear. Although they had already walked out of the illusion, it was still very painful to think about it. If Lin Yi hadn't rescued them, they wouldn't have realized that they were in the illusion. "No," Lin Yi said in a low voice, I keep feeling that this relic is weakened. My head hurts. Lin Yi was very puzzled. He always felt that this relic wouldn't end so easily. However, reality slapped him in the face. The relic was over. As long as they stepped into the space passage, this trip to the relic would be over. Forget it, let's go out. Shaking his head slightly, Lin Yi didn't want to think too much. He looked at Shen Qingyun and immediately stepped into the space passage. Shen Qingyun stroked the necklace again with a smile on her face before she followed him. Feng Tianyi and the others looked at each other and didn't understand Lin Yi's meaning. They shook their heads and followed. Buzz. After Lin Yi and the others stepped into the space passage suddenly closed. As for Lin Yi and the other 8, they had entered a mysterious state. When they woke up, they were already floating in the air amidst clouds. No, it would be more accurate to say that it was the clouds that lifted them up. Where is this? Frowning, Lin Yi and the others woke up. They immediately stood up and looked around. However, in the next moment, their faces all became lifeless. What appeared in front of them was a person who didn't look very old. However, his face was stern and dignified. If he was described as a young man, he would be mature and steady. If he was described as a middle-aged man, he would be much younger. This person was Elder Theta Scarabii, 18th Elder. Greetings, 18th Elder. Feng Tianyi and the others quickly saluted. Even Shen Qingyun saluted seriously. Shen Qingyun even dared to joke around with Flawless White. However, when facing Theta Scarabii, Shen Qingyun was very serious. Greetings, Elder Theta Scarabii. Lin Yi and Qingyue quickly saluted. No need to be so courteous. Theta Scarabii sized up Lin Yi and the others and finally fixed his eyes on Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun. He suddenly smiled and said, "Little guy, we meet again." End of chapter. Chapter 677. Little guy, we meet again. Theta Scarabii smiled and looked at Lin Yi. I didn't expect you to be the one who led the team to pass through this relic. Hearing this, Lin Yi's expression changed slightly, and he immediately confirmed the guess in his heart. This relic was definitely not a simple heavenly saint relic. Little guy, it looks like you've already guessed something. Theta Scarabii chuckled and glanced at Lin Yi and the others. That's right, this relic is just a replica of a small relic that we separated out. The power inside is not even 1/5 of the relic's power. This relic is also for experts at the level of the Great Sage to fight for. Of course, since you can pass through the replica of the small relic, it means that you have the qualifications to fight for the relic, especially the 2 of you who have obtained the divine consciousness imprint. As she spoke, Theta Scarabii's gaze fell on Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun. Lin Yi was fine, but when Theta Scarabii looked at Shen Qingyun, her eyes were full of surprise. I'm very curious. You haven't cultivated the power of divine consciousness. So how did you obtain the divine consciousness imprint? Elder, the cultivation method that I cultivate is a little special. Shen Qingyun replied. If that's the case, then I won't ask any more questions. Nodding slightly, Theta Scarabii looked at Lin Yi again and chuckled. Now that you have passed through the replica of this relic, if the people from the other 3 major domains can also pass through within 2 months, then this relic will truly open. At that time, the 9 of you will be able to go and fight for your own opportunities. Really? Hearing this, Lin Yi and the others were all excited. It was just a replica of a small relic, but it could bring them so much improvement. If it was a real relic, wouldn't the improvement be even greater? Why are you so excited? Theta Scarabii raised her eyebrows and said, There are many opportunities in the ruins, but the dangers are far more terrifying. Isn't danger meant to be neutralized? Lin Yi raised an eyebrow and chuckled. The path of cultivation is a path that defies the heavens. We have nothing to fear. Good, what a heaven-defying, fearless move. Theta Scarabii stared at Lin Yi for a moment, then suddenly smiled and said, In that case, the 7 of you will cultivate with me for the next 2 months. As for Lin Yi and that little girl, You could go to the sky market to train for a month. Coincidentally, the sky market will open in half a month. Sky market? Hearing this, Lin Yi, Shun Qingyun, and the other 8 were extremely curious. They looked at each other, their eyes filled with curiosity. The sky market belongs to the outer yard. You guys don't have to think about it. Theta Scarabii glanced at Shun Qingyun and the others and said softly, "You guys can cultivate with me at ease. As for the 2 of you, when you return to the outer yard, the elders will tell you about the sky market. Coincidentally, the sky market selection test will begin in 5 days. Only the top 10 who pass the test will be able to participate in the sky market. Only the top 10 can participate in the sky market." Hearing this, Qin Yu's expression changed slightly. With her strength, it would be difficult for her to go to the sky market. Fortunately, she had improved a lot in this trip to the relic and had obtained a spiritual consciousness cardinal treasure. If she could integrate the spiritual consciousness cardinal treasure within 5 days, it would be possible for her to be in the top 10. Phew, if you guys can't break through to the Great Sage Realm or reach rank 60 spiritual consciousness power in 2 months, I won't let you go to the relic. All right, the trip to the relic is over. I'll send you back. After saying this, Theta Scarabii didn't say anything else. Without giving Lin Yi and the others a chance to speak, he waved his right sleeve. In an instant, rich spatial energy rippled and instantly enveloped Lin Yi and the other 8. Buzz! Lin Yi felt dizzy and couldn't help but shake his head. When he came to his senses again, he was shocked to find that he was already outside his residence in the outer yard. Beside him was Qin Yu. At this moment, Qin Yu also revealed a horrified expression. She was incomparably shocked. SSS, Elder Theta Scarabii, is actually stronger than Flawless White. Touching his nose, Lin Yu was shocked. Originally, he thought that Flawless White was already very strong. He was also in the Heavenly Saint realm, but he was able to suppress more than 10 Heavenly Saints. If it wasn't for the triple kill formation and the close to 10,000 Saints, those Heavenly Saints wouldn't even be able to block one move from Flawless White. However, Theta Scarabii made him understand this time what it meant to say that there was always someone better than you. With a wave of his hand, he could travel through space and send us here with great precision. What realm is he in? Qin Yu murmured, her face full of surprise. They understood that Theta Scarabii's strength must have surpassed the Heavenly Saint realm or even the Absolute Saint realm. At this moment, Lin Yi was surprised. Theta Scarabii and Chun Daoxian had a good relationship. Why was Chun Daoxian not as strong as Flawless White and Theta Scarabii? Chun Daoxian's strength was at most in the Heavenly Saint realm. Compared to Flawless White, there were many shortcomings. According to Lin Yi's speculation, Flawless White could probably break through the Heavenly Saint realm at any time and reach a higher realm. As for Theta Scarabii, he was definitely an existence that surpassed the Heavenly Saint realm. Chun Daoxian, Flawless White, and Theta Scarabii. The 3 of them had a complicated relationship, but the difference in strength was so great that Lin Yi was curious. It seems that Chun Daoxian and Flawless White aren't simple. Touching his nose, Lin Yi suddenly thought of Flawless White's identity and immediately understood. That's right. Elder Bai is the great elder of the outer yard after all. If he wasn't strong enough, the so-called lord wouldn't be at ease with him. Sibu Gakuin is really powerful. Qin Yu took a deep breath and gradually suppressed the excitement in her heart. She looked at Lin Yi and said, "Lin Yi, what do you plan to do next? Are you confident that you can get in the top 10? As long as I can recover the power of my divine sense. Not to mention the top 10, I'll definitely get first place." Lin Yi grinned. In the outer yard, their strength was at most an invincible saint. If he could recover and use the newly learned 5 spirits divine technique, it would be easy to deal with them. Wolsh *T. Qin Yu rolled her eyes at Lin Yi and said snappily, "Then I'll continue to cultivate." Phew, to break through to level 60 divine sense or the great sage realm in 2 months, the pressure is so great. With a sigh, Qingyu didn't wait for Lin Ye's reply and directly returned to the courtyard. Lin Yi shrugged, his heart also filled with pressure. Whether it was level 60 divine sense or breaking through to the great sage realm, it was very difficult to break through in a short period of time. It seems that the so-called sky market really can't be missed. Narrowing his eyes, Lin Yi knew that an elder of Theta Scarabee's level wouldn't say nonsense. Even he praised the sky market so much, there must be a great opportunity hidden in the sky market. In a chapter. Chapter 678. Back in the courtyard, Silent Soul and Sun Wuyu were still cultivating. Although they were in charge of running the Heavenly Sword Sect, they didn't need to spend too much time cultivating, as the Heavenly Sword Sect was on the right track. During this period of time, although they didn't break through, their auras were steadily increasing, which made Lin Yi very satisfied. I wonder how Luo Bingyue and the others are doing. Phew, with Xue Feng and Shi Wei, there shouldn't be any problems. Lin Yi narrowed his eyes, but his thoughts were interrupted by Sun Wuyu and Silent Soul. Feeling the aura, Sun Wuyu and Silent Soul woke up and looked at Lin Yi with joy. "Young master, you're back." "Captain, it's been almost half a month. You're finally back." "What?" Hearing this, Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and was surprised. "You said half a month has passed." "Yes, it's been 12 days. Sun Wuyu blinked and looked at Lin Yi in confusion. "Hiss, I'll continue cultivating, you guys guard outside. In these 3 days, no matter who comes, even if it's an elder, don't let them in. Guard for me." Clenching his fists, Lin Yi became nervous. 12 days had passed, which meant that he had to restore his divine sense to level 40 in the next 3 days. 3 days, even with the help of the Universe Pagoda and the Ninefold Space, it was only 768 days. It was important to note that Lin Yi had absorbed so many holy herbs and so much divine sense aura in the ruins to restore his divine sense to level 37. The remaining divine sense would take more than time to restore. Suddenly, Lin Yi frowned as he realized that his divine sense had been restored to level 38. This surprised him and made him overjoyed. He was confident that he could restore his divine sense from level 38 to level 40 in 700 days. Since that was the case, he had to go get the moon drop first. Without the moon drop, he couldn't cultivate. Thinking of this, Lin Yi turned and walked out of the courtyard towards the hidden Saint Pavilion. On the way, Lin Yi carefully recalled what had just happened and remembered that when Theta Scarabei waved his hand and sent them back, Theta Scarabei looked at him and smiled. At that time, he happened to enter the spatial tunnel and didn't notice anything wrong. However, at that moment, the divine sense in his body began to boil. "Hiss, why would Elder Theta Scarabei help me? You should know that I urgently need to recover my strength. Could it be that he just wants to give me some benefits?" Frowning, no matter how he thought it, he couldn't understand Theta Scarabei's thoughts. After a while, Lin Yi couldn't be bothered to think about it and rushed towards the hidden Saint Pavilion. After reaching the hidden Saint Pavilion, Lin Yi went directly to the 10th floor and waited for Flawless White to appear. After the previous few encounters, Lin Yi could tell that Flawless White's main task was to watch over Chun Daoxian. Therefore, Lin Yi was sure that Flawless White would appear as soon as he appeared. Sure enough, after a dozen breaths, Flawless White's figure appeared in front of Lin Yi. "Hey, you're recovering pretty fast. It seems that the relic you wanted was pretty good." Sensing Lin Yi's recovery speed, even Flawless White was surprised. "I was just lucky." Lin Yi laughed softly. "However, after we went through the relic, Elder Theta Scarabei appeared." Rolling his eyes, Lin Yi told Flawless White about this matter. Instantly, Flawless White's face became serious, and he said in a low voice, "I didn't expect that you went to the relic." 2 months later, it seems that there will be another bloody storm. Lin Yi was extremely surprised. "Is the relic that scary?" "Oh, it's not the relic that's scary, it's the people." Flawless White shook his head and said, "There's a big secret hidden in the relic. It's said that the general chapter of the 5 Spirits Divine Technique is inside." The Five Spirits Divine Technique is a divine-level divine technique. Naturally, there will be many people fighting over it. Tens of thousands of years ago, the relic of the Five Spirits Divine Technique appeared. For a time, the whole continent was in chaos. Everyone was fighting over the Five Spirits Divine Technique. Inside the relic of the Five Spirits Divine Technique, it was a bloody battlefield. Speaking of this, Flawless White was stunned. He immediately smiled and said, "Forget it, it's been so many years. Let's not talk about it. You just have to remember that when the relic of the Five Spirits Divine Technique reopens, the big forces in the four regions will send people over. You must be extremely careful." Although there were restrictions from the four great forces, and they said that even if the relic reopens, only juniors below the Heavenly Sage Realm can fight over it, it's hard to guarantee that some forces will take the risk. Oh, hearing this, Lin Yi could not help but frown. If the relic itself had restrictions on one's strength, it would be fine. If it was just fighting with the Great Sage, he was not afraid. However, if there were no restrictions in the relic, and it was just a man-made restriction, there would be too many loopholes. What if a Heavenly Sage Realm expert sneaked in and killed everyone in the relic? Don't worry, His Honor has cooperated with others to set up a formation outside the relic of the Five Spirits Divine Technique. It can isolate the experts above the Heavenly Sage Realm. Flawless White said in a deep voice, "What I'm worried about is that some Heavenly Sage Realm experts will wait for you to come out before attacking you. After all, the relic of the Five Spirits Divine Technique is located in a vast area, and we can't send too many elders to protect you. Before we arrive, you can only rely on yourselves. That's not a problem." Lin Yi said with a smile, "Elder, you mentioned the complete chapter of the Five Spirits Divine Technique earlier. Do you mean that the chapter of the Five Spirits Divine Technique that we obtained in the relic is only an incomplete chapter?" "Yes," Flawless White said with a smile. "I didn't guess wrong. The Five Spirits Divine Technique is indeed in your hands." Phew! The relic of the Five Spirits Divine Technique has been divided into 4 parts and placed in the 4 regions. Only when the 4 relics are cleared within 2 months will the final relic of the Five Spirits Divine Technique be opened. In every relic, there is a set of the Five Spirits Divine Technique. Although it's an incomplete chapter, when combined together, it will surpass the Heavenly Sage Realm and is extremely powerful. Moreover, only by obtaining the incomplete chapter of the Five Spirits Divine Technique can one obtain the true Five Spirits Divine Technique. In other words, the only ones who will benefit from the final relic will be you and the other 3 people who have obtained the incomplete chapter of the Five Spirits Divine Technique. Then when the final relic is opened, should I snatch the Five Spirits Divine Technique from the other 3 people? Lin Yi rubbed his nose and suddenly laughed. In that case, won't the Five Spirits Divine Technique be mine? How can it be so easy to snatch the Five Spirits Divine Technique? Flawless White said in a deep voice, "Phew, with your current strength, it's no different from a fool's dream to snatch the Five Spirits Divine Technique. There are still 5 days before the Sky Market opens. You'd better work hard on your cultivation." As soon as he finished speaking, Flawless White raised his right hand, and a bright light suddenly flashed. End of chapter. Chapter 679. Wang. Amidst the dazzling radiance, a gentle moonlight suddenly lit up. A drop of water, sparkling with blue light, appeared in front of Lin Yi. "This is the moon droplet." Taking a deep breath, Lin Yi stared at the water droplet. Immediately, he felt his entire body and mind become refreshed. He was rather shocked. Not only did the moon droplet have the power to recover one's soul, but it could also cleanse one's soul. That's right, Flawless White said softly. "To refine the moon droplet, you'll need at least 2 days. There's no need to say anything else. Go back and refine the moon droplet later. But remember, you must restore your divine telekinesis to rank 41st. Looking at your current recovery speed, it'll take some time for you to recover to level 40. How's the auspicious sign?" Flawless White suddenly thought of the auspicious sign and asked directly. The auspicious sign is rubbing his nose. Lin Yi couldn't help but reveal a bitter smile. My soul force and divine sense are exhausted. If I can't recover quickly, I'm afraid the auspicious sign won't be able to hold on. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in such a hurry to find a way to recover my divine telekinesis. Hearing this, Flawless White could not help but gasp. He was not too concerned about Lin Ye's recovery speed. After all, Lin Yi was in Cebu Gakuen and no one could hurt him. However, he could not ignore the auspicious sign's safety. If the auspicious sign was in danger, the entire continent would collapse. Rolling his eyes, Bai Wuxia gritted his teeth and said, "Then follow me to the inner yard. There's a time-secret realm in the inner courtyard that can help you recover quickly." "All right, do you still have the herbs to recover soul energy?" "Yes." Lin Yi nodded slightly and felt a warm current in his heart. He did not expect Flawless White to be so friendly to him. "That's good." Flawless White did not waste any more words. With a light wave of his right hand, the moon droplet landed on Lin Ye's body and melted into it. Lin Ye only felt his body turn cold. In the next instant, the moon droplet had already reached his heart, nourishing his body. "All right, follow me to the inner court." Before Flawless White could finish his words, he pulled Lin Yi with him. With a thought, he stepped into the space and merged with it. Buzz! The spatial airflow was so strong that Lin Yi instantly closed his eyes. Boom, boom, boom. The berserk power was like a gale, constantly slapping Lin Ye's body, tearing at his skin. Upon realizing this, Flawless White realized that he had forgotten to protect Lin Yi. Hurriedly, he summoned a shield and enveloped Lin Yi. After a while, when Lin Yi felt that he was standing on solid ground again, he was already in front of the cave. The cave was extremely shabby. It did not look any different from an ordinary cave. However, Flawless White was extremely respectful when he arrived. He bowed towards the entrance of the cave. Seeing this, Lin Yi hesitated for a moment. Then, he followed Flawless White's example and bowed respectfully. It was obvious that there was an expert from Cebu Gakuen in the cave. Even Flawless White had to treat an expert with respect. What kind of cultivation level was that? No matter what, it had to be an expert at the pinnacle of the absolute saint level. "What's the matter?" Suddenly, a dull voice was heard. To Lin Yi, it was like a bolt from the blue. It was so loud that his ears were ringing. He could not hear anything clearly at all. It was obvious that the person in the cave did not want Lin Yi to hear the following conversation. Rolling his eyes, Lin Yi quickly understood this. Without saying anything, he sat down with his legs crossed. Bai Wuxia, who was beside him, explained the whole reason. After a moment of silence, a strong pulling force suddenly came from within the cave, pulling Lin Yi in. Lin Yi was shocked. When he opened his eyes again, he was already in darkness. It was pitch black before him. He could not see anything clearly. Even though he was a saint, he could not see anything at all. "Don't panic. This is a space-time hole." The rumbling in his ears dissipated. The dull voice was heard again. "Time passes extremely slowly here. Cultivating for 1 day is equivalent to cultivating for 10 days. You can cultivate here until your divine sense recovers." "Thank you, Elder." Lin Yi nodded slightly. Since he knew that this was the time mystery realm of Cebu Gakuen, he was no longer worried. He summoned the Universe Pagoda and the Ninefold Space. He wanted to see if the space-time hole could be superimposed with the Universe Pagoda and the Ninefold Space. This time, it seemed that even the heavens were standing behind Lin Yi. The space-time hole could perfectly superimpose with the Universe Pagoda and the Ninefold Space. In fact, with the three superimposed, the flow of time would be even slower. In this way, the 3 days would be delayed to 7,680 days. In terms of adult years, it would be a full 20 years. 20 years was enough for Lin Yi to recover to his peak strength, even without the help of sacred medicine. Phew! Not many people in the inner yard know about this space-time hole. It will be difficult to enter in the future. 20 years is enough for me to completely recover my divine sense and break through to the great sage level. In this way, I won't have to worry about those people when I explore the Five Spirits God Relic. At the thought that the Five Spirits God Relic was specially designed for the Great Sage level and that there might even be heavenly sage experts involved, Lin Yi was even more eager to become stronger. After all, with his current strength, he could deal with an ordinary Great Sage. If he encountered a peak Great Sage or an invincible Great Sage, he could only run away, let alone a heavenly sage expert. To be able to have more than 20 years of time for him to cultivate was simply a pleasant surprise. Without hesitation, Lin Yi opened the Universe Pagoda and entered the Ninefold Space. As soon as he entered the Ninefold Space, Biluo greeted him excitedly. You found a good place this time. There's actually the power of law, which can help you cultivate faster. There's even the power of law here? Upon hearing this, Lin Yi was extremely surprised. He was even more grateful to Flawless White. He did not expect Flawless White to bring him to such a good place. That's right. Not only are there various elemental laws, but there's also the power of law of space-time. Perhaps if you cultivate here for a period of time, once you break through to the Great Sage level in the future, you'll be able to comprehend the power of law. Biluo's voice suddenly became hurried. There's also good news. The power of law here is too rich, so Auspicious Sign can last longer. In other words, you don't have to worry about Auspicious Sign anymore, as long as you can completely recover your divine sense before leaving this place. Auspicious Sign will not be in any danger. Phew! Upon hearing this, Lin Yi immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Very good. In this way, he would have time to study the things he obtained from the Heavenly Sage Relic. Perhaps it would give him a huge surprise. End of chapter. Chapter 680. In the Heavenly Saint Relic, Lin Yi had obtained a total of 2 items, the incomplete Five Spirits Divine Technique and a Crimson Jade Plate. He had already comprehended the Five Spirits Divine Technique, but it was a combination of divine consciousness and elemental energy. Lin Yi had not examined the Crimson Jade Plate properly, but he felt that there was a great secret hidden within it. Lin Yi took out the Crimson Jade Plate and studied it carefully. Biluo also came over and stared at it closely. Strange, after a long while, Biluo suddenly said, "Why do I feel that this jade plate looks very familiar?" Familiar? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and asked in surprise, "You've seen it before? What is this?" Hiss! Biluo rolled her eyes and suddenly said, "Try to merge it first." All right. Lin Yi immediately activated his divine consciousness and surged it toward the jade plate. Buzz! Buzz! However, no matter how much his divine consciousness surged, the Crimson Jade Plate remained unmoved. There was no reaction at all, and there were no changes. This made Lin Yi extremely surprised. Normally, a divine consciousness cardinal treasure only needed to be touched by divine consciousness to start refining. Although the refining process was very complicated, there was no exception. Why was this divine sense cardinal treasure unaffected after coming into contact with his divine sense? Could it be that there was a change in his divine consciousness, and he could not communicate with the divine consciousness cardinal treasure? Indeed, Biluo said in a low voice, "Summon the flame territory and burn this jade plate." Hearing this, Lin Yi could not help but be curious. This was a divine consciousness cardinal treasure. Why did she need to use the method of refining a supreme sacred artifact? After hesitating for a while, Lin Yi chose to believe Biluo. With a slight thought, the flame territory appeared and immediately enveloped the jade plate, burning it. Beep, 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 beep. Beep, 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 beep. The flames burned fiercely. Lin Yi and Biluo both stared at the jade plate. Not far away, the power of law lingered around the egg. It jumped a little further away and pulled away from Lin Yi and Lin Yi. Drip, drip. After a long while, the jade plate finally changed and began to melt. Buzz. After melting, the carvings on the jade plate turned into liquid. The phoenix was even more lifelike, as if it had come alive, flapping its burning wings. Indeed, this is the phoenix nirvana. Jade Fall's breathing quickened. This is a 10 spirits supreme treasure. 10 spirits treasure? Hearing this, Lin beep 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 of 10 spirits. The 5 spirits spell, the 5 spirits god relic. If it was a treasure, it should be a 5 spirits treasure. That's right, it's a 10 spirits supreme treasure. Phew, let's not talk about it now. Hurry up and merge with it. With it, your divine telekinesis can at least recover to level 45. With the power of the moon droplet, it will be more than enough to recover to the peak. You can even make a breakthrough. Biluo urged Lin Yi to merge. Although Lin Yi was surprised, he knew that he could not waste time and immediately activated his divine telekinesis. This time, almost at the same time Lin Yi's divine telekinesis appeared, the phoenix opened its eyes. Screech! A crisp screech suddenly rang in Lin Yi's mind. In the next moment, the fire phoenix spread its wings and flew into Lin Yi's body. Boom! 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 Almost at the same time that the fire phoenix entered Lin Yi's body, blazing red flames suddenly erupted from Lin Yi's body, turning him into a flaming man. Beep! 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 In an instant, every inch of Lin Yi's skin was burning. However, Lin Yi, who was within the flames, did not feel any abnormalities. His heart was beating with a thump-thump sound. It was extremely powerful. Screech! The fire phoenix screeched again. The flames suddenly changed color and burned the space continuously. Drip! Drip! Under the burning of the flames, Lin Yi's body began to melt. In just a few breaths, his limbs had been melted by the flames and turned into a ball of flames. At this moment, Lin Yi's heart finally began to panic. However, there was nothing he could do. He could only watch helplessly as the flames melted his body. Buzz! The moon droplet flickered and once again appeared in Lin Yi's heart. A strange power was emitted from his heart. However, when the power came into contact with the burning flames, the temperature of the flames rose again. Boom! In an instant, the speed at which the flames melted his body increased. Before Lin Yi could react, his entire body, including his head and heart, had melted away and turned into a ball of flames. In his heart, the moon droplet still flickered with light. Lin Yi was panicked. However, he quickly reacted. Even though his body had melted away, he did not feel anything. Moreover, he felt that there was an even stronger power in his heart that was restless. Plop! Plop! The moon droplet flickered with light. The flames beside it had turned into a heart. A brand new heart with flesh and blood. It also had flames and the radiance of the moon droplet. Originally, the moon droplet had only temporarily stayed in Lin Yi's heart. However, this time, the moon droplet's power was absorbed by Lin Yi's heart. Plop! Following the powerful beating of the flaming heart, the rest of the flames gradually turned into various organs. In just a dozen breaths of time, Lin Yi's body once again condensed. Every inch of his skin contained a violent power and flames. At this time, Lin Yi once again regained control of his body. With a thought, all the flames on his body dissipated. Lowering his head to take a look, he discovered that his new body was no different from his previous one. Clenching his fists and waving them a few times, Lin Yi's eyes immediately lit up. Although this body did not look any different from before, the power contained within was more than several times stronger than before. Lin Yi relied on the Divine Dragon 9 transformations, and his physique was extremely strong. He was only at the middle stage of the Saint stage, but he was already able to fight against a peak Saint. At this time, his physique had strengthened once again, and he was no longer much weaker than an invincible Saint. As for the aspect of divine sense and soul, it gave Lin Yi an even bigger surprise. Lin Yi's soul had completely recovered, and his spiritual will had recovered to the 45th step. Moreover, it was still recovering at an astonishing speed. The Phoenix's nirvana is indeed powerful. Not far away, Biluo sighed, but in her heart, she was envious of Lin Yi's luck. Back then, with her cultivation, it was difficult for her to encounter such a divine object. However, Lin Yi was so weak, yet he was able to encounter divine objects one after another and be related to them, making her jealous. If she could obtain a divine object, she wouldn't have ended up like this. As expected of the phoenix's nirvana, I feel like my entire body has experienced a new life. Clenching his fists, Lin Yi was incomparably excited. He was sure that this new body was much stronger than his old body. In a chapter. Chapter 681. Of course, Biluo grinned and said, after experiencing the phoenix's nirvana, your body will no longer fear any yang fire. As long as it contains the power of yang fire, it will not be able to harm you. Hiss! Hearing this, Lin Yi was overjoyed. He did not expect that this trip to the heavenly saint relic would bring him so many benefits. All right, while the power of the moon droplet is still there, quickly absorb it. Biluo suddenly said, now that your heart contains flames, the moon droplet can't be stored for too long. Damn it, I almost forgot about it. With a cry of surprise, Lin Yi immediately used the power of his divine thought to extract the moon droplet. Looking at the shining moon droplet, Lin Yi looked at Biluo and asked curiously, how do I use this thing? Just integrate it into your knowledge, see. Glancing at the moon droplet, Biluo sighed and said, it's a pity that it's just an ordinary moon droplet. If it were the moon droplet, you would have a higher chance of receiving the moon god's blessing. It's my fortune to get it. It's my fate to lose it. Smiling slightly, Lin Yi took a deep breath and controlled the moon droplet to integrate into his forehead. Buzz. Almost at the moment when the moon droplet touched Lin Yi's forehead, a silver-white light shone down and enveloped Lin Yi. A strange power filled Lin Yi's body and nourished it again. At the same time, the divine sense in Lin Yi's body surged wildly like a volcano erupting. Boom, boom, boom. Level 46, level 47, level 48, level 54. As if there was no obstruction, Lin Yi's divine sense recovered to level 57 in just a few breaths' time. This was not the end. The moonlight shone down and rippled with a beautiful halo. An extremely strong power burst out and turned into divine sense, pouring into Lin Yi's body. Boom! The bottleneck that had been obstructing Lin Yi's progress suddenly collapsed, and he directly broke through to level 58 divine telekinesis. Boom, boom, boom. After the breakthrough, the power of his consciousness continued to rise. However, its speed had slowed down. It only stopped when it reached the peak of level 58. The remaining special power, seeing that it could no longer break through the bottleneck, scattered and merged with Lin Yi's limbs. Lin Yi's spiritual force had gained another type of power. This surprised Lin Yi. He originally thought that only cultivation methods could be integrated into the power of spiritual force, but now it seemed that it was not that simple. Combining several cultivation methods and the power of moonlight with the power of divine sense, if combined with the five spirits' divine art, the power unleashed would be shocking. The power of the moonlight completely dissipated and the silvery white light fell. Lin Yi looked at his own body, and he felt as if he was in a dream, and very unreal. It's only been a short while, but not only has my physique been strengthened, my soul power has also fully recovered. My divine telekinesis has also broken through to the peak of tier 58. This is just like a dream. Lin Yi was extremely excited. A short while? Biluo's mouth twitched. She sighed and said, are you crazy? Whether it's the moon droplet or the fiery phoenix disc, they're both sacred treasures. How can it not take time to refine them? It's just that during the refining process, you can't feel the passage of time. Lin Yi's mouth twitched, and his expression turned serious. He quickly asked, how much time has passed? It's been a year. Biluo grinned and said, it might only take 2 days to refine the moon droplet, but the fiery phoenix disc in your body has caused the moon droplet to mutate. Otherwise, do you think you could have broken through? A year? Hearing this, Lin Yi was stunned. He was completely dumbfounded. What a joke. He originally thought that refining the fiery phoenix disc and the moon droplet would take at most 2 months. However, it seemed that he had underestimated the two treasures. No wonder they're sacred treasures. Phew! Lin Yi let out a breath of turbid air. After all, it had brought him so much improvement. 1 year was worth it. Now that my spiritual force and soul power have completely recovered and even improved, not only is my auspicious sign safe, but I also have confidence. Biluo said in a deep voice, after this trip, you must collect more treasures that can improve your soul power. Otherwise, you'll have to risk your life every time, and it'll be very harmful to me. I can help you if I recover more of my strength. Okay, Lin Yi said in a deep voice, I still need to cultivate for another 19 years. You should cultivate too. Okay, no problem. Biluo nodded slightly. Just as she was about to turn around, her body froze on the spot. Wait, what did you say? Biluo stared at Lin Yi with her mouth twitching. Cough, cough. Lin Yi said softly, I'm cultivating in the space-time hole in Cebu Gakuen now. With 10 times the time ratio, I still have 19 years of cultivation time after stacking it with the universe pagoda in ninefold space. Hiss! Hearing this, Biluo couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. She frowned slightly and said in surprise, It shouldn't be. Under normal circumstances, it is impossible for 3 space-time treasures to overlap. Not to mention 3, even 2 stacking together is a rare occurrence. At this point, Biluo rolled her eyes at Lin Yi and continued, 3 stacking together. I'm afraid you'll be struck by lightning when you get out. Puffed. Lin Yi almost spat out blood as he stared at Biluo in shock. Don't doubt me. Biluo's expression was solemn as she said in a deep voice, Space-time treasures are meant to hide from heaven's secrets. The ninefold space and the universe pagoda are both divine items that can allow you to escape the detection of heaven and earth. But now, with 3 space-time treasures stacked together, it's difficult to hide your space-time powers. Lin Yi looked at Biluo carefully. Seeing that her expression was serious and did not look like she was joking, he immediately panicked. Of course, it's to cultivate hard. Biluo glanced at Lin Yi and said in a deep voice, As long as you're strong enough, even heaven's wrath can't do anything to you. Once, there was a powerhouse who dispersed the heavenly tribulation. Lin Yi's mouth twitched, and he could not help but sneer. 19 years should be enough for you to break through to the Great Sage Realm or level 60 Divine Telekinesis. It depends on what you choose. Biluo's eyes turned, and she changed the topic decisively. Level 60 Divine Telekinesis is like level 55 Divine Telekinesis. It's also a dividing line. Level 60 Divine Telekinesis is equivalent to the Great Sage Realm. At that time, if you're lucky, your divine telekinesis will give birth to supernatural powers that are unpredictable. 19 years, and you can't raise both to the Great Sage Realm. Lin Yi looked at Biluo in surprise. If it's 19 years outside, of course it's possible. Biluo said snappily, but if you continue to cultivate for 19 years without going through life and death battles, your saint power will stagnate when it reaches a certain level. Only when it's completely stabilized can you continue to cultivate. It's the same for divine telekinesis. If cultivation is so simple, why don't you find a secret place and hide for 1,000 years? Won't you be invincible when you come out? In a chapter. Chapter 682. Lin Yi was confused. He looked at Biluo and did not know whether to laugh or cry. He also understood that the martial arts path of Theta Scarabii was not a boring cultivation. However, he did not expect that after 19 years of cultivation, he could not break through to the great sage level in both his martial arts and divine sense. Phew! After a moment of silence, Lin Yi said softly, Let's increase your divine sense first. After all, the 5 Spirits God relic is the relic of a divine sense saint. The trial inside must be related to divine sense. Yes, when your divine sense and saint power have reached the bottleneck, you can cultivate martial arts techniques and cultivate those divine level martial arts techniques to the extreme. Biluo nodded slightly. You can't stop comprehending the power of law. I remember that when your divine sense reaches level 60, you can also begin to comprehend the power of law. Hearing this, Linyi could not help but sigh. It seemed that he still had many things to do. Without hesitation, Linyi immediately took out the remaining sacred elixirs and swallowed them in one gulp. He began to cultivate again. His divine sense was already at the peak of level 58. He only needed a little more effort to break through. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months passed. Under Lin Ye's continuous attacks, the bottleneck of his divine sense was soon defeated and successfully broken through. After the breakthrough, Lin Yi spent another month to completely stabilize his divine sense. After that, Lin Yi began to cultivate saint power. Lin Ye's martial arts realm had always been weak. Even after so many advancements, it still could not catch up to the divine sense realm. It was still at the middle stage of the saint level. This time, there were many power of law in the space-time hole. With the help of the power of law, Lin Ye's saint power increased quickly. In just half a year, he had stabilized at the peak of the middle stage of the saint level. He only needed an opportunity to break through. However, this opportunity took Lin Yi 3 months, and he still could not complete the breakthrough. The impatient Lin Yi was unable to calm down and could only switch to cultivating martial skills. In the Divine Dragon 9 transformations, due to the existence of the Phoenix's nirvana, other than the power of thunder, there was actually a bit of the power of fire which had been raised once again. This also allowed Lin Yi to gain some insight. What was the nirvana divine dragon? Could all destructive forces be counted as nirvana? If that was the case, would his annihilation divine dragon transformation reach consummation after comprehending all of the power of destruction? Among the elemental powers, other than lightning and fire, only darkness and death possessed the power of destruction. In other words, if he wanted to perfect the annihilation divine dragon transformation, he had to comprehend the elements of darkness and death as well. However, this was only Lin Ye's guess. Lin Yi once again switched to the Heavenly Emperor Fist. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 5 months had passed, and Lin Yi had completely mastered the Heavenly Emperor Fist. He was at the peak of the 7th level of the Heavenly Emperor Fist, and he was even about to break through the shackles of the 7th level of the Heavenly Emperor Fist. The Exterminating Sky Finger and the Heavenly Frost Aurora had both reached the peak and reached the shackles, unable to be improved any further. Moreover, when he was cultivating the Heavenly Frost Aurora, the saint power in Lin Ye's body surged, and he actually broke through to the late stage of the saint level. From beginning to end, it only took 2 years. Therefore, Lin Yi once again cultivated the power of his divine sense, trying to break through to the 59th level with all his might. When his cultivation reached a bottleneck and he could not be prompted, Lin Yi would switch to other cultivation, whether it was saint power, martial skills, or refining a supreme sacred artifact. The supreme blacklight shield was almost broken. At this time, Lin Yi was doing his best to repair it. In less than 3 months, he had recovered and even absorbed some of the power of laws, becoming stronger and stronger. Time flowed like water as he cultivated. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. After 18 years, Lin Ye's divine sense and saint power had broken through to the highest point that he could reach. No matter how hard he cultivated, there was no improvement at all. The 59th level of divine sense was invincible in the great circle of the saint level. Originally, Lin Yi wanted to break through to the 60th level of divine sense first, so that he could deal with the 5 spirits god relic. However, on second thought, after 20 years, only 3 days had passed in the outside world. He still had to participate in the selection and explore the so-called sky market. Therefore, improving his level was the best choice. Moreover, the 5 spirits god relic would only open in 2 months. He was confident that he could break through to the 60th level of divine sense before the relic opened. Therefore, after his divine sense broke through to the 59th level, Lin Yi focused on his martial arts cultivation. The blazing flames, supreme blacklight shield, supreme sacred armor, sky-devouring mirror, heaven-suppressing supreme cauldron, flaming phoenix disc, and other supreme sacred artifacts had all been refined for the second time. His control over them had become more precise. All the saint-level martial arts techniques, including the 9 cauldrons god suppression and the first 2 forms of the sky sword 12 forms, have been cultivated to the pinnacle level. It could be said that all of Lin Ye's strength had been raised to the pinnacle. Apart from life and death battles, he can no longer improve his other skills. It seems like it's time to look for some new supreme sacred artifacts and martial arts techniques. Foundation. Only with more foundation can I break through. After finishing his cultivation, Lin Ye's eyes shone brightly. Not far away, Biluo sensed that Lin Ye had finished his cultivation and immediately stopped cultivating. Sizing up Lin Ye, Biluo praised, "Not bad, you've improved a lot. Next, since you can improve your divine sense and saint power, you can try to merge those divine sense skills together." Hearing that, Lin Ye remembered that he still had the ability to merge different divine sense skills. Immediately, he studied it carefully. In the beginning, Lin Ye had only combined 2 ordinary divine will skills. However, the effect was not very good. The power of his divine will exploded. If it were not for the many treasures in his sea of consciousness protecting him, he would have been injured. After learning about the danger, Lin Ye became more careful and began to merge the other skills. However, the results were not satisfactory. Although Lin Ye was able to cultivate different divine will techniques at the same time, and he was able to fuse them together, he was still unable to fuse 2 divine will techniques together. After experimenting for half a year, Lin Ye could only give up on the idea. On that day, following the last explosion, the egg under the chaotic divine tree that was bathed in the power of the precept also exploded. With a crisp sound, the eggshells all over the sky shattered. A figure suddenly jumped out and floated in the air. Lin Ye and Biluo were shocked. When they turned to look, the corners of their mouths twitched. What came into view was a kitten with a pair of wings on its back. A kitten with wings, and it was born from an egg. In an instant, Lin Ye and Biluo were stunned. Their faces were filled with disbelief. Since when was a kitten born from an egg? Moreover, it had a pair of wings. This strange cat is the legendary auspicious sign of the entire mainland. Looking at the strange cat, Lin Ye's mouth twitched. He could not even speak. In a chapter. Chapter 683. An auspicious sign, or more accurately, a strange cat with wings, floated in the air with its eyes slightly closed. This, sucking in a breath of cold air, Lin Ye and Biluo looked at each other, their expressions extremely shocked. "Are you sure this is really an auspicious sign?" Lin Ye frowned slightly and said in shock, "An auspicious sign is actually a cat. I've never seen an auspicious sign before." Biluo sighed. "From the looks of it, this little guy is very likely to be a true auspicious sign. Its body contains the power of 7 types of laws. Although it's still in a deep sleep, it has unlimited possibilities. How can an ordinary cat have this kind of aptitude? Phew, this is too shocking." Lin Ye held his forehead and sighed helplessly. "In this case, even if I bring it out and hand it over to the Academy, I'm afraid the Academy won't believe that this is an auspicious sign, right?" Probably. Biluo spread out her hands. "After all, there's still the power of laws in its body." A wolf. Suddenly, a wolf howl sounded, startling Lin Ye and Biluo. This was a 9-fold space. How could there be a wolf howl? Looking around, Lin Ye and Biluo's expressions became more and more awkward in the next moment. That strange cat opened its eyes, waved its 2 little paws, and let out a wolf howl. Its big, sparkling eyes stared at Lin Ye. Is this a cat or a wolf?" Lin Ye looked confused. What was going on? If it was a cat, why was it howling like a wolf? Auspicious signs are really unpredictable. Biluo was also stunned. She carefully sized up that strange cat for a moment and said in a low voice, "Although it's very strange, its identity as an auspicious sign is definitely real. It's just born and already has the strength close to the great sage's realm. It's not bad." Hearing this, Lin Yi finally noticed the strange cat's strength, and his expression suddenly became serious. Hiss, it's just been born, and its strength isn't inferior to mine. I believe that it's an auspicious sign, unless it's a divine item. How could there be such an opportunity? Lin Yi smiled bitterly. He didn't expect that the auspicious sign of the entire continent was actually a strange cat. If word got out, wouldn't this be too much of fantasy? Even if Lin Yi brought the strange cat out and openly told others that the strange cat was an auspicious sign, no one would believe him. At this moment, after auspicious luck let out that wolf howl, it fell into a deep sleep again. It was especially sweet. Obviously, it was not wary of Lin Yi and Biluo. Seeing this, Lin Yi placed the auspicious sign under the chaotic divine tree. He sat beside the divine tree and looked at the increasingly vast origin heavenly water with great satisfaction. This time his strength had improved, and he hadn't made any mistakes in the ninefold space. It could be said that he had gained a lot. For the rest of the time, focus on sensing the power of laws. Once you break through to the great sage realm, your strength can leap again. Biluo looked at Lin Yi, her eyes filled with jealousy. To be able to comprehend the power of laws when he just entered the great sage, he was absolutely a one-in-a-million existence. Lin Yi was rather convinced by Biluo and sat cross-legged under the chaotic divine tree without the slightest hesitation, sensing the power of heaven and earth's laws. 3 days later, in the space-time hole, flawless, White was like a statue standing at the entrance. Buzz. Suddenly, light flickered. A figure appeared at the entrance of the cave. Huff! Lightly exhaling a mouthful of turbid air, that figure opened both eyes. Divine light immediately bloomed in his eyes, resplendent and dazzling. Even flawless White turned his head slightly, not daring to look. Little guy, looks like you recovered pretty well. Flawless White laughed lightly. After the light dissipated, he sized up Lin Yi. At the same time, Lin Yi's soul quietly awoke. Rumble, crackle. Almost the moment Lin Yi woke up, dark clouds gathered in the sky. Thunder raged, lightning flashed, as if a heavenly tribulation had descended. What's going on? Flawless White frowned slightly and hurriedly looked up. After realizing that it was a thunder tribulation, he let out a sigh of relief. Although the thunder tribulation was terrifying, he did not need to worry with the Supreme around. TSK. How long has it been since there was a thunder tribulation in Cebu Gakuen? How dare it appear here? Courting death? With a sneer, Flawless White suddenly thought of something, and the expression on his face froze. The corner of his mouth twitched. Flawless White sized up Lin Yi carefully and could not help but gasp. In his memory, before Lin Yi entered the space-time hole, he was clearly a mid-stage saint, and his divine sense was only at level 38. Only 3 days had passed. Even with the help of the space-time hole, it had only been 30 days. How could Lin Yi's realm have broken through so much? Shaking his head violently, Flawless White was shocked by Junior for the first time. His mouth was wide open, and he was shocked. As far as they knew, space-time treasures could not be stacked. In other words, Lin Yi had cultivated for 30 days at most. Not only had his divine sense completely recovered, but he had also broken through to level 59, and his martial arts cultivation had broken through 3 levels in a row, reaching the peak of the invincible saint realm. This was simply unbelievable. Hiss! No wonder there was a thunder tribulation. With such fast progress, could it be that he has obtained another divine item? The corner of his mouth twitched. Flawless White swallowed a mouthful of saliva. When he thought that Lin Yi had obtained 2 divine items in a row and could even obtain auspicious signs, he felt relieved. Wasn't it just breaking through a few levels in a row? If Lin Yi was lucky enough to obtain the moon god's blessing, even if Lin Yi drank a mouthful of water and directly became a heavenly saint or an absolute saint, Flawless White would not be surprised. Rumble! Flawless White felt relieved, but it did not mean that the lightning in the sky would feel relieved. Lin Yi's speed of breaking through was too fast. 3 types of space-time powers were added to him, and it could not hide the secrets of heaven. The violent lightning gathered, and there was a kind of aura that would not stop until one of them was dead. The aura of this lightning doesn't seem to be from the saint realm. At this time, Flawless White also noticed that something was wrong with the lightning. Vaguely, the lightning actually had a power that made him feel lingering fear. Crackle! Violent lightning suddenly appeared, and the light blue lightning was like a dragon. It suddenly fell and struck toward Lin Yi. The dragon's roar reverberated in the entire space. For a moment, Lin Yi and Flawless White both took a few steps back and looked at the lightning in horror. Especially Lin Yi. When he woke up, he almost cursed out loud. It was fine if there was a lightning tribulation, but he was only in the saint realm. What was the meaning of a lightning tribulation that even peak heavenly saints were afraid of? This was simply not giving him a way out. Not to mention Lin Yi. Even Flawless White was very depressed. What did Lin Yi do to attract such a level of lightning tribulation? Rumble. The lightning was extremely fast. In just 2 breaths, it enlarged in Lin Yi and Flawless White's eyes. Its power was even more piercingly cold, as if it would explode on their bodies at any time. However, just as the lightning was about to fall, a strange wave exploded. In the next moment, the lightning was like snow meeting the scorching sun, disappearing without a trace. In a chapter. Chapter 684. Phew! Flawless White heaved a sigh of relief when he saw the lightning dissipate. This was the space-time hole. What was there to worry about with the supremacy here? Even the lightning of the absolute saint realm couldn't hurt them at all in front of the supremacy. However, Flawless White was shocked when he thought that the lightning tribulation was triggered by Lin Yi. His mouth twitched as he stared at Lin Yi. Cough, cough. Lin Yi was under a lot of pressure when he was stared at by Flawless White. He coughed awkwardly. Hiss! Flawless White grinned and said, "Little guy, what did you do to trigger such a powerful lightning tribulation?" Lin Yi was about to reply when Flawless White interrupted him. He shook his head and flew away with Lin Yi. This time, they weren't in a hurry. Lin Yi had recovered from his injuries, so there was no need to worry. Flawless White didn't fly too fast and floated in the air slowly. Little guy, you're already very powerful to be able to recover your divine while in such a short time. I didn't expect you to make such a big breakthrough. Oh, did you get the moon god's blessing when you absorbed the moon droplet? Flawless White asked curiously. In his opinion, it was impossible for such a thing to happen unless it was the moon god's blessing. The moon god's blessing? Lin Yi exclaimed. He just remembered that he had been cultivating crazily after absorbing the moon droplet. He even forgot to check if he had received the moon god's blessing. With a thought, Lin Yi hastily woke by Luo up and examined her body. However, Billy Yuo's words poured cold water on Lin Yi. Don't think about it. If you had received the moon god's blessing, I would have sensed it. You're already very lucky. If you could receive the moon god's blessing, how could others live? Bai Luo didn't reply. She didn't want to bother with Lin Yi. Lin Yi's luck was already very good. If he could receive the moon god's blessing, what was the point of others living? Who was Lin Yi's enemy? They might as well kill themselves. Going against Lin Yi was living in a dream. Lin Yi's mouth twitched. He looked at Flawless White and said helplessly, "It didn't awaken. Looks like my luck is too bad." Hiss! Gasping, Flawless White couldn't suppress the shock in his heart. He pressed Lin Yi's shoulder and asked in surprise, "How did you break through so many realms? Or should I improve both my martial arts cultivation and my spiritual force cultivation after recovering from my spiritual force injury?" Maybe, rolling his eyes, Lin Yi chuckled and said, "The birth of auspicious signs gave me a lot of power. That's why I broke through so many realms at once." Flawless White already knew about the auspicious signs. Besides, Cebu Gakuin was interested in the auspicious signs. He could also benefit from it. Naturally, he wouldn't hide it from Flawless White. The Universe Pagoda and Ninefold Space were Lin Yi's trump cards. He definitely couldn't reveal them. Therefore, Lin Yi didn't hesitate and told him about the birth of auspicious signs. What did you say? The birth of auspicious signs? Flawless White was overjoyed. He pressed Lin Yi's shoulder harder, almost causing Lin Yi pain. Ha ha ha, that's great. The auspicious signs are finally born. Flawless White was overjoyed and no longer doubted Lin Yi. In his opinion, auspicious signs were the symbol of a continent's providence. Once they were born, they would naturally have a strange power. Not to mention helping others break through, even if it could directly turn a powerless person into an invincible sage ruler. He would believe it. Looking at the excited Flawless White, Lin Yi was very surprised. This was the first time he saw Flawless White so emotional. Was auspicious signs really so important that it could make a peak expert change his expression? Ha ha ha, that's great. After a long while, Flawless White's emotions gradually calmed down. He said happily, "Let's go. Let's hurry to the space-time hole and tell this good news to the Lord." "No, Ba." Flawless White suddenly slapped Lin Yi and said angrily, "Why didn't you tell us when we were in front of the space-time hole? You told me when we were far away. You did it on purpose." Lin Yi wanted to cry, but had no tears. He said angrily, "Elder Bai, you were so fast. How could I have time to talk?" Cough, cough. After coughing awkwardly, Flawless White's expression turned serious. He laughed dryly as he got up and flew toward the space-time hole again. Therefore, Lin Yi quickly arrived in front of the space-time hole again. Lord, auspicious signs have appeared." Before he finished speaking, Bai Wuxia's voice had already spread out. This made Lin Yi extremely puzzled. A dignified expert at the peak of the heavenly saint realm was actually so impatient. If not for Flawless White's strength, Lin Yi would have suspected that this Flawless White was a fake. Buzz. Swoosh. Just as Lin Yi was secretly complaining, a figure suddenly appeared in front of the space-time hole. Lin Yi was shocked when he saw the figure. He focused and realized that the figure was wrapped in a long black robe. Even his head was covered by a hood and a veil. It was impossible to see clearly. His figure was especially burly, and the aura in his body was like the vast ocean. It was unfathomable and gave people a feeling of vastness. Lord, Flawless White quickly landed with Lin Yi and quickly bowed. Lin Yi did not hesitate and bowed as well. What a joke. This was Cebu Gakuin's lord. He was one of the strongest experts in the entire continent. Auspicious signs have appeared. A hoarse voice was heard slowly. Can I take a look? Of course. Lin Yi did not mention the request he had mentioned earlier. With a thought, he summoned the auspicious signs in the ninefold space. In an instant, a strange cat appeared in the air, still in a deep sleep. This is auspicious signs. The corner of Bai Wuxia's mouth twitched violently when he saw the strange cat. Flawless White took a deep breath and glanced at Lin Yi. If he did not know that Lin Yi did not like to joke, he would have slapped Lin Yi to death. Yes, this is auspicious signs. Lin Yi smiled bitterly and felt helpless. If possible, he also wanted the auspicious signs to change forms. Even a tiger, a qilin, or a giant dragon would be better than a strange cat with wings. Poochie, Poochie. The strange cat seemed to have noticed Lin Yi and the others' gazes. It flapped its wings and made a crisp sound. Its eyes were still closed, and its breathing was calm. It was still sleeping. Newborn spirit beasts had to sleep for a period of time to accumulate the energy needed for their survival. The stronger they were, the longer they would sleep. Even the auspicious signs were no exception. What a surprise. The auspicious signs are actually cats that can fly? Flawless White was so surprised that his mouth almost fell open when he sensed the power of law in the strange cat's body. Flawless White kept patting his head with his hand, looking confused. What was going on? He was more surprised today than in the past year. In a chapter. Chapter 685. After all, Flawless White and the Great Lord were both top powers. They quickly noticed the strange cat's abnormality and acknowledged its identity. Although they acknowledged it, they were still surprised. Anyone who thought of the auspicious sign on the mainland would think of a Kirin or a giant dragon. Even a lion would be fine. What was a cat trying to do? Was it trying to act cute? TSK. The auspicious sign has yet to fully awaken. Take good care of it. The great lord shook his head and disappeared from Lin Yi and Flawless White's sight in a flash. Originally, the great lord wanted to examine the auspicious sign carefully. If he could find something special about the auspicious sign, he might be able to surpass the shackles of his realm. However, the auspicious sign status made him give up on the idea. He could see that there was nothing special about the auspicious sign. The only thing worth mentioning was that it was born with the strength of the great sage realm and contained the power of order in its body. However, this was far from enough for the great lord. Therefore, he chose to continue cultivating and left the auspicious sign in Lin Ye's care. When the auspicious sign grew in the future, he would make other plans. After the great lord left, Flawless White asked curiously, "What are you going to name the auspicious sign? Also, when will it wake up?" "I don't know." Lin Yi sighed helplessly. "It's been half a year, and it's still in a deep sleep." "Forget it. You should take part in the assessment and get a place to enter Sky Market." Flawless White grinned and said, "Hee hee, Sky Market is a good place. Although it can improve your martial arts cultivation, it can greatly improve your spiritual power and soul power." "What exactly is Sky Market?" Hearing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but be curious. Flawless White and Theta Scarabii were both top powers. They still held Sky Market in high esteem and looked forward to it. "We'll talk about it after you get a place." "Don't tell you that you can't even get a place." Flawless White waved his hand. "I can't get a spot?" Lin Yi shrugged his shoulders and said snappily, "If I can't get a spot with my current realm, I'm afraid Auspicious will be angered to death." Before he broke through to the Saint realm, Lin Yi had already fought his way into the top 50 of the Saint transformation rankings. Now, not only had his cultivation broken through to the invincible Saint realm, the strength of his divine sense had become more than 10 times stronger than before. So, how could he possibly be unable to obtain a position? Not to mention the outer courtyard. Even if it was the inner courtyard students, Lin Yi had the confidence to fight them. Cough, cough. Flawless White knocked on Lin Yi's head. "You can't be so arrogant. Almost everyone in the top 20 of the Saint Transforming Board has their own methods." "I'm confident." Lin Yi grinned and suddenly laughed. "Elderby, how about we make a bet?" "Nope." Flawless White coughed lightly. With a wave of his right hand, he rushed to the outer courtyard with Lin Yi. In less than 10 breaths of time, Lin Yi had returned to the outer courtyard. At this moment, many students in the outer courtyard turned into a torrent and rushed to the blood refinement field. Only the top 200 of the Saint Transformation Board could compete for a spot to enter the Sky Market. There were very few people competing for a spot, but every student was very concerned about it. They were unwilling to miss this grand event. It wasn't even noon yet, but the blood refinement field was already filled with students. Under Flawless White's lead, Lin Yi descended from the sky and landed on the luxurious stage in the middle. Elderby, you're here." On the stage, the other elders hurriedly stood up and bowed. Then, they looked at Lin Yi's expression in shock. Although the elders knew that Lin Yi was talented, they were still shocked when they saw Flawless White personally bringing Lin Yi here. Even the elders were shocked, let alone the other students. They were all stunned. "What's going on? That elder is the outer courtyard's great elder. He actually brought a student to participate in the competition. Doesn't this mean that he has already decided on a spot?" "Internally decided my ass. That guy is the leader of this batch of new students." It said that he entered the outer courtyard and entered the top 50 of the Saint Transformation Board. This time, he disappeared for so long. Who knows, he might really have a chance to get a spot. I never expected that a new student would have such a huge improvement. Many students were stunned, especially the older students. All of them felt extremely guilty. They had been in the outer courtyard for many years, but their strength hadn't increased by much. When Lin Yi first entered the outer courtyard, he was only a sage-to-be. Now, even the outer courtyard's great elder had a whole new level of respect for him. Compared to him, they were really too weak. The new students were completely excited. They constantly shouted Lin Yi's name. For a moment, the entire blood refinement ground was filled with thunderous voices. The stronger Lin Yi was, the more confident the heavenly rapier sect would be. Lin Yi never expected that he would be so popular. Feeling the cheers of the crowd, he recognized the heavenly rapier sect even more. It seems like I should visit the heavenly rapier sect if I have a chance. Lin Yi secretly made up his mind. He was ashamed. Ever since the heavenly rapier sect was established, Lin Yi had never been there. Silence. Flawless White raised his right hand. In an instant, a sound wave rippled out. It was like a huge bell that suppressed all the voices. Many students in the blood refinement ground raised their heads and stared at Flawless White. At this moment, there were still people squeezing in. Noticing this, Flawless White frowned and suddenly exhaled. In the next moment, that exhalation floated out and turned into a huge light screen. The light screen reflected the scene in the blood refinement ground. The blood refinement ground is full. The rest of the students can watch from the outside. The top 200 on the Transforming Saint list, please come up. As soon as he finished speaking, more than 100 figures leaped out at the same time and landed steadily on different arenas. The top 3 on the Transforming Saint list were all outstanding disciples of different generations. They were no longer in the outer courtyard. Among the top 10, 2 of them were mavericks and didn't come back to participate. In addition, some people knew that they couldn't obtain the qualification to enter the Sky Market and didn't want to waste time. There were only about 100 people who participated in the competition. Among them, there were only 2 new students. They were Lin Yi and Qingyu. As for Shangguan Yunqi, Mu Yi, and the rest, although they were talented, they couldn't compete with the top students in the outer courtyard. After everyone settled down, Flawless White's voice rang out once more. The top 10 in this competition will have the qualification to enter the Sky Market. After the final result is out, everyone will have another chance to challenge. Those who have been challenged once can reject the next challenge. Next, let's start drawing lots. As soon as Flawless White finished speaking, he waved his right hand and countless balls of light gathered in the air. End of chapter. Chapter 686. In the next moment, Lin Yi and the rest leaped up, and each of them obtained a ball of light. Buzz. After obtaining the ball of light, before they landed, a ray of light shot out from the ball of light. Swish, swish, swish. In an instant, countless rays of light intertwined. After a while, those rays of light connected everyone, and each of them had a corresponding one. The first round of the competition begins. As Flawless White's voice fell, those rays of light suddenly entangled everyone and threw them onto the arena. Lin Yi's opponent was Zhu Mingyong, whom he had defeated previously. It's you. Zhu Mingyong's mouth was slightly open, and he was stunned for a moment. Then he laughed out loud. Just nice, since I lost you last time, I have worked hard to cultivate. This time, I must avenge my humiliation. Avenge your humiliation? Raising his eyebrows, Lin Yi looked at Zhu Mingyong. Although his strength had stabilized, it did not increase. He could not help but laugh. In the past, Zhu Mingyong could take more than 10 moves from him. Now, Zhu Mingyong could not even take 1 move. That's right. Zhu Mingyong's face was solemn. He stomped his feet on the ground, and his entire body suddenly emitted a yellow light. Not far away, the people at the peak of the cloud mountain cheered for Zhu Mingyong. Of course, there were even more people cheering for Lin Yi. Their voices resounded through the sky. Heya! Overlord splitting the mountain. With a light shout, Zhu Mingyong clenched his fists and waved them continuously. A golden light flashed, and a strong force suddenly gathered in his chest. Low-grade sacred class, martial skill. Raising his eyebrows, Lin Yi's shoulders shook. The destructive divine dragon transformation burst out. Violent lightning mixed with scorching flames covered Lin Yi's body. Kill! Zhu Mingyong bent his legs and pushed his fists forward. The surging force was like a gale, and it went straight for Lin Yi. Ta-ta-ta! However, In the face of such an attack, Lin Ye's expression did not change. He held his head high and his chest out and went straight for the attack. Bang, bang, bang. The surging power collided with Lin Ye's chest, and an intense fluctuation immediately erupted. However, Lin Ye's figure did not move at all. He continued to walk towards Zhu Mingyong at an unhurried speed. What? Zhu Mingyong's pupils shrank as he stared at Lin Yi in shock. He didn't dare to believe that his full-strength strike actually didn't do anything to Lin Yi. Phew, you weren't a match for me in the past. Now, you're even less of a match. Zhu Mingyong's face warped. Before he could react, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. Bang! The berserk power wreaked havoc, and Zhu Mingyong's body flew out like a cannonball. Boom, boom, boom. Zhu Mingyong's body trembled as he crashed into the arena's barrier. He couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. However, the pain from those injuries was nothing compared to the shock in his heart. What's the situation? How long had it been? How did Lin Yi become so strong? Not to mention Zhu Mingyong. Even the elders on the grandstand were stunned. A month ago, this little fellow was merely an intermediate saint. How did he become an invincible saint with his current strength? This little fellow couldn't have been possessed by some old fellow, right? Those elders were at least at the invincible great sage realm. The moment Lin Yi made a move, they saw through his realm. All of them were incomparably shocked as they turned their heads to look at Flawless White. Noticing this, Flawless White nodded slightly. He finally felt much better in his heart. How could he be the only one who was shocked? Don't worry, he only obtained some opportunities. It's not a possession. Flawless White smiled faintly and said in a low voice, "This year's new students are truly remarkable. How long has it been? And there are already 2 people who can make it into the top 10 of the Saint Transforming rankings. Truly impressive." Hearing this, the elders shifted their gazes to Qing Yu on the other side. This time, Qing Yu's opponent was a disciple in the top 30 of the Saint Transforming rankings. However, in front of her, he still couldn't last more than 10 moves. It's only been less than 2 months since they entered the outer court, and there are actually 2 people with such strength. Congratulations. When the 2 of them enter the inner court, they'll definitely cause a great commotion. The elders were full of praise. Even for them, this was the first time in dozens of years that they had encountered a student as talented as Lin Yi and Qing Yu. The first round of the competition ended very quickly. Lin Yi and Qing Yu's luck wasn't bad. They didn't encounter anyone in the top 10 of the Saint Transforming rankings, nor did they encounter anyone in advance. After several rounds, there were only 20 people left in the competition. This time, each competition wasn't separated but carried out consecutively. It could be considered an eye-opener for the other students. Lin Ye's opponent was Deng Tongxian, who was ranked 17th on the Saint Transforming rankings. Coincidentally, Deng Tongxian was the second expert at the peak of Cloud Mountain. He had a grudge with the Heavenly Sword Sect. Deng Tongxian, peak saint realm, even possessed a supreme sacred artifact. His strength was formidable, and ordinary invincible saints would not be his match. However, even so, in the hands of the Lin Yi who broke through to invincible saint realm, Deng Tongxian was defeated before he could even activate his supreme sacred artifact. This scene was extremely shocking in everyone's eyes. Even the powerhouse ranked 17th on the Saint Transforming rankings couldn't block one move from Lin Yi. The top 10 might not be Lin Ye's match either. Qing Yu was also stunned. She didn't expect that the Lin Yi who recovered his strength would be so powerful. The thought of originally wanting to compete with Lin Yi was completely dispelled. Deng Tongxian was defeated. Lin Ye's quota to head to Sky Market was confirmed. Next was the rest of the competition. Qing Yu's luck wasn't very good. She encountered a powerhouse ranked 10th on the Saint Transforming rankings and bitterly fought several hundred moves. In the end, she relied on the power of divine sense to gain the upper hand and successfully obtain the quota. In an instant, all the new students were ecstatic and excited. 2 new students participated in the selection of Sky Market, and both obtained the quota. This was too great for their sky rapier sect. In the future, no one would dare to provoke them easily. As for the other forces, not to mention the powerhouses ranked 10th on the Saint Transforming rankings, even the top 20 were rare. The Sky Rapier sect had 2 of the top 10, and they had the most people. How would they dare to act recklessly? After 2 hours, the competition officially ended. 10 figures stood in the middle of the arena with their heads held high and chests puffed out, accepting the cheers of the many students. Flawless White and the other elders also nodded slightly, feeling satisfied. Next, if anyone is unconvinced and feels that their luck was bad, they have another chance to challenge. Of course, there is only one chance. If no one challenges within the time it takes to burn an incense stick, it will be counted as a forfeit. As his voice fell, the people who had been defeated earlier hesitated, constantly sizing up the 10 people in the arena. Before long, those people's gazes all landed on Qingyu, as well as the student who had just broken through to peak Saint Realm. As for Linyi, they didn't even think about it. What kind of joke was this? From start to end, Linya's opponent didn't even last one move. Wouldn't they be courting death if they challenged again? End of this chapter. Chapter 687. It had to be said that people always picked soft persimmons to bully. Those who had been defeated earlier all challenged Qingyu. However, they did not expect Qingyu's divine sense to be so powerful. Especially with the help of a divine sense treasure, it was not difficult for her to defeat them. After an hour, all the challenges were over. Those who had been defeated finally realized that the strength of the 10 people in the arena was indeed stronger than theirs. Seeing that no one dared to challenge again, Flawless White stroked his beard. Just as he was about to end the selection, a crisp laughter suddenly rang in everyone's ears. What's that sound? Boom, boom, boom. Surging Saint aura surged and landed on the entire blood refinement arena like a mountain. Why did this guy suddenly come back? Feeling the Saint aura, many elders, including Flawless White, were slightly shocked. Noticing this, Lin Yi, who was in the ring, couldn't help but be surprised. He could feel that the person who had come was only at the peak of the invincible Saint realm. Why would the elders be surprised? Not only the elders, but many students were also very surprised. It seems that Yi Yin is here. Didn't Yi Yin go out to train? Why is he here too? Swoosh. Just as everyone was discussing, a figure quietly descended from the sky and gradually landed on the arena. All right, Yi Yin, quickly disperse your Saint aura. Flawless White shouted in a deep voice. Hee, elders, I trust you have been well since we last met. After landing safely, Yi Yin turned back and cupped his fists at the elders. There was no respect on his face. He smiled and said, It's just Saint aura. Elders, why would you take it to heart? Humph. Hearing this, the elder with the calligraphy position immediately snorted. Surging power oppressed and instantly defeated Yi Yin's Saint aura. In response, Yin shrugged and did not say anything. He just turned his head to look at Lin Yi and the others. Elders, it seems that something big has happened recently. I wonder if I can join in. I just heard that you can challenge the 10 people present, right? Although Yi Yin's voice was gentle, the look in his eyes gradually became piercingly cold. After Xiao Chen spoke, aside from Lin Yi and Qingyu, the rest of the 10 people on the arena all panicked. They had all seen how powerful Yi Yin was and knew that they were no match for him. When they heard his words, they naturally became extremely nervous. This will be fun. Yi Yin is ranked 4th on the Saint Transformation board, and his strength far surpasses the rest. If he were to make a move, one of them would definitely be eliminated. I just don't know who will be so unlucky. The numerous students began to discuss amongst themselves, pointing and whispering with strange expressions on their faces. The new students, on the other hand, had stupefied looks on their faces as they looked at Yi Yin in puzzlement. They didn't know Night Hidden's identity, so they asked the students beside them. After they found out about Yi Yin's identity, they were all shocked and worried. They were afraid that Lin Yi and Qing Yu would be picked by Yi Yin. The corners of the elders' mouths twitched as they turned to look at Flawless White. They did not want to be interrupted by Yi-In. Cough, cough. Flawless White said in a deep voice. Yi-In, stop stirring up trouble. There's no harm in having one more spot in the Sky Market this time. TSK. Hearing this, Yi-In immediately yawned and said indifferently, this is too boring. I've long heard that this year's freshmen have pretty good talent, especially someone called Lin Yi. Not only did he defeat the older students in the hunting war, he even charged to the top 10 of the Saint Transformation Board in a short 2 months. This kind of talent makes my hands itch. Hearing these words, the faces of many new students changed. How could they not tell that Yi-In was targeting Lin Yi? The new students were worried, but the older students were excited. During this period of time, the Heavenly Sword sect had a faint tendency to suppress the older students, causing them to be especially furious. However, the Heavenly Sword sect had the advantage in numbers. In addition to Lin Yi and Qing Yu's strength, the others were unable to resist and could only silently endure. Now that Yi-In had returned, the thought of suppressing the new students surfaced in their hearts. Otherwise, wouldn't it be too stifling? Back then, they had been suppressed by the older students for several years. How could this batch of new students suppress them? Especially the disciples from the previous batch, they felt even more aggrieved. Why were they always the ones who were injured? Interesting, with his brows slightly raised, Lin Yi raised his eyes and looked at Yi-In. Coincidentally, Yi-In was staring at Lin Yi, and the two immediately looked at each other. Crackle, crackle. An invisible light flickered. Lin Yi and Yi-In both narrowed their eyes, feeling a huge threat. Originally, Lin Yi didn't pay too much attention to Yi-In. After all, he was only an outer court disciple. However, after looking at each other, Lin Yi realized that Yi-In also cultivated both the martial way and spiritual will. Moreover, Yi-In's spiritual will was even stronger than Lin Yi's. If it wasn't for Lin Yi's spiritual will being special and fused with the 3,000 heavenly Tao, God's guide, and many other cultivation techniques, allowing him to resist Yi-Yin's spiritual will, Lin Yi would have been at a disadvantage in the previous exchange of glances. Enough. Sensing Lin Yi and Yi-Yin's probing, Flawless White was enraged and slammed the table. Both of you stop. Who do you think you are? Have you grown wings and won't even listen to my words? His voice was like thunder, and a surging saint's aura suddenly enveloped the entire blood refinement ground. Under this mountain-like saint's aura, everyone in the blood refinement ground, including the elders, trembled slightly and their hearts trembled. Lin Yi and Yi-In were no exception. They only felt a violent surge of energy rush down and cold sweat drip down their foreheads. At this moment, Yi-Yin's expression finally changed, and he was extremely embarrassed. After all, Flawless White was one of the top powerhouses in the entire Cebu Gakuen. That kind of strength wasn't something that the current him could resist. Oomph. With a cold snort, Flawless White withdrew his aura and looked at Yi-In indifferently. Little guy, don't think that you can act presumptuously in front of me just because you've obtained some opportunities outside. This junior wouldn't dare. The corner of Yi-Yin's mouth twitched, and he chose to admit defeat. The rest of the elders all let out a long sigh of relief, feeling very uncomfortable. This time, they had been suppressed by Flawless White's aura in front of so many students. How are they going to show their faces in the future? Lin Yi looked at Flawless White curiously. Didn't he say that there would be 10 spots? Wasn't he afraid that something would happen if there was suddenly an extra spot? All right, the rest of the disciples are dismissed. Lin Yi, Yin, the 11 of you stay. As soon as he finished speaking, Murong Ning and the other elders got up and began to disperse the students. In a short while, only Lin Yi, Yin, the 11 people, and Flawless White were left in the blood refinement ground. The location of Sky Market is extremely special. In the future, you're not allowed to reveal any information about Sky Market. Flawless White's face was solemn as he said in a deep voice, anyone who violates this rule will be killed without mercy. Killed without mercy. Lin Yi and the others looked at each other, all of them extremely surprised. in a chapter. Chapter 688. Is Kill Without Mercy? Hearing this, Lin Yi, Qing Wei, and the others looked at each other, feeling extremely surprised. The rest of the people were even more dumbfounded. After coming to Cebu Gakuen for so many years, the elders had always been kind to them. They were shocked to see him being so serious all of a sudden. "Don't think that I'm joking," Flawless White said indifferently. "The existence of Sky Market is extremely special. If you speak of it, even if you are disciples of the Academy, no matter how powerful the forces behind you are, only death awaits you." Seeing how serious Flawless White was, Lin Yi and the rest could not help but gasp. They already knew that Flawless White would definitely do what he said. This made them curious. What kind of existence was Sky Market that could make Cebu Gakuen so nervous? "All right, come with me." With a wave of his right hand, Flawless White flew up. An invisible wave quietly enveloped Lin Yi and the rest of the 11 people and brought them to the mountain range. After a while, Lin Yi and the rest felt dizzy. When they woke up again, they were surrounded by white fog and could not see clearly. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Under Flawless White's lead, the group broke through the white fog and came to a strange cave entrance. Buzz! With a flash of light, 2 figures appeared and blocked the group's path. Lin Yi and the rest were shocked. When they looked over, they realized that the aura of the 2 figures was unfathomable. It was as deep as the sea, and it was shocking. "Elders, it's time to open the sky ruins," Flawless White said indifferently. The 2 elders glanced at the group and whispered, "Why is there one more person?" "It's okay. I can take it." Flawless White's face was indifferent. The 2 elders frowned and said in a low voice, "It's too dangerous. If you can't take it, not only will you go berserk, but the entire Sky Market will collapse. Kicking one out is the best way. Elders, do you still not believe in my strength?" Flawless White raised his eyebrows. "Phew. All right, I'll trust you this time. If you can't hold on, just call for help. We'll be ready to help at any time." The 2 elders sighed and waved their index fingers. In an instant, the white fog dispersed, revealing a passage. "Thank you, Elder." Flawless White nodded slightly and immediately rushed into the cave residence with Lin Yi and the others. Lin Yi turned his head and glanced at Yi. He was extremely surprised in his heart. Just who was this Yi to actually be able to make Flawless White take such a risk for him? At that time, the time would have already passed. Flawless White could completely deprive Night Hidden of the opportunity to participate in the Sky Market. However, the result was the exact opposite. Not too long later, a glowing lotus platform appeared before the crowd. Lin Yi, who was deep in thought, suddenly came to his senses. He looked at the lotus platform in astonishment. He could feel that the golden light contained a special power. What is this?" Everyone kept sizing up the golden lotus. Sky Market is a world built by the 4 great regions. In a while, when you sit on the golden lotus, you will enter a world completely condensed by the power of spirit sense. In that world, you are not physical entities. You will enter it with your spirit sense. If you die, you will be forced out of Sky Market and your spirit sense will be damaged. I think Lin Yi knows the consequences of his spirit sense being damaged very well. He definitely won't want it to happen a second time. Phew, so I hope you will try your best not to get hurt. Wait until Sky Market closes and safely exit. Flawless White said in a deep voice, "I won't say anything else because I don't know what exactly is in Sky Market." In an instant, Lin Yi, Yi-In, Qing Yu, and the others looked at Flawless White with strange expressions. "What are you talking about if you don't know?" Although that was what they thought, they were even more fearful. If even Elder Bai didn't know what was in Sky Market, didn't that mean that Sky Market was full of danger? Although Sky Market is a world built by the 4 great regions, this is the first time it has opened. None of us know what is in that world. There are 2 missions for you to enter this time. First, explore Sky Market and record all the information in Sky Market. Second, find out the strength of the other 3 great regions. especially abysmal heavenly region. Third, huh? Hearing this, Lin Yi, Qing Yue, and the others looked at Bai Wuxia in confusion. They had agreed on 2 missions, so why was there 3? Cough, cough. Flawless White coughed softly. Third, protect yourselves. All right, sit on the golden lotus. Next, you will go to New World. At this point, Bai Wuxia's expression was extremely solemn. Although Cebu Gakuen had participated in Sky Market, the formation of a world had its own path. Even they couldn't interfere with it. Moreover, in the process of building Sky Market, they had reached a bottleneck. However, a genius from abysmal heavenly region suddenly came up with a new method to solve all the problems and build a new world at an extremely fast speed. This made the people from Cebu Gakuen worried. Perhaps that world wasn't created by them, but had existed before. However, they couldn't prove it with just guesses. Moreover, the other 2 great regions didn't have any objections. After a meeting, the people from Cebu Gakuen decided to suppress the matter and send students in to investigate before making a decision. Just as Flawless White was deep in thought, Lin Yi, Qing Yu, and the others sat on the golden lotus. In an instant, Lin Yi and the others were covered by the golden light. They felt warm and comfortable. Phew, I hope that our guess is wrong. With a thought, Flawless White put his palms together and waved them around. In the next instant, the golden lotus gave off a bright light and covered Lin Yi and the others. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The golden light drew many pictures in the void and rippled with a mysterious power. Lin Yi and the others sat cross-legged on the golden lotuses. The power of their divine senses quietly emerged from their spirit seas and condensed into figures one after another. However, no one noticed that there were 2 figures beside Lin Ye's spiritual sense figure. A strange cat and a lady silently circled around Lin Ye's spiritual sense figure. Outside the golden lotus, Flawless White trembled and spat out a mouthful of blood. How could this be? SSS. With my strength, I can safely teleport 15 or 20 people, let alone 11. No, the auspicious sign is also in Lin Ye's body. At this point, Flawless White couldn't help but smile bitterly. I forgot about this. Phew, with the auspicious sign, I don't have to worry about their safety. I hope that everyone can return safely. End of chapter. Chapter 689. Whoosh, whoosh. A sinister wind blew on his body, sending chills down his spine. Feeling the sinister wind, Lin Yi gradually woke up. He shook his head violently and opened his eyes slowly. What entered his sight was a ruin. A dilapidated palace with broken walls and dilapidated walls stood quietly on a piece of land. What is this place? And this sinister wind, it feels real when it blows on my body. After rubbing his arms for a moment, Lin Yi was rather surprised. He looked around, but shockingly discovered that there was no one beside him. What's going on? Lin Yi was shocked. He hurriedly immersed his mind, wanting to enter the ninefold space. However, in the ninefold space, the Chaos Divine Tree and other supreme treasures were still there, but Biluo was nowhere to be seen. Could it be? Is this an illusion? Raising his brows, Lin Yi couldn't help but be surprised. After hesitating for a moment, Lin Yi began to examine his body carefully. He pinched it. The pain was very real, which surprised Lin Yi. Wasn't this a world completely built by divine perception? Why did his body feel so real? Even the feeling of the sinister wind blowing was so real. Seems like there's indeed something wrong with this world. If it's a world completely built by divine perception, it's normal that Biluo can't follow me. I can't be sure if it's an illusion. After pondering for a moment, Lin Yi strode toward the ruins. In the ruins, broken fences and dilapidated walls were extremely dilapidated. There were also countless things scattered on the ground. Lin Yi examined carefully and immediately realized that something was wrong. Most of those things were bones with strange runes carved on them, giving off an indescribable aura. Could it be that these are all items used for rituals? Raising his eyebrows, Lin Yi thought of the sacrificial ceremony. However, why were there strange runes carved on the bones? Moreover, most of the tools used for rituals were made of bones. It was shocking. Only in ancient times did humans use bones. As early as hundreds of thousands of years ago, humans had already learned how to smelt iron. Could it be that the world constructed by divine will is still in the ancient times? Squinting his eyes, Lin Yi did not hesitate to pick up some bones and put them away. Apart from some sacrificial offerings made from bones, there was nothing else in the ruins. Lin Yi jumped onto the ruins and looked around. All around them was a vast and boundless wilderness. Only in the distance to the east, there was a flickering light. Without any hesitation, Lin Yi rushed towards the east. No matter what, they had to find the person first. It would be even better if they could meet the other members of Cebu Gakuen. At this moment, Lin Yi was a little depressed. He had forgotten to ask Elder by how many people could enter the Sky Market world. It had to be said that the Sky Market world was not small. The flickering light made Lin Yi run for an hour, but he still had not arrived. He was only getting closer. For hours later, the sky darkened. It was as if a curtain had been pulled over the entire sky. In the blink of an eye, it was pitch black. This surprised Lin Yi. As he furrowed his brows, a cold aura surged from his body. It was as if the temperature of the entire space had dropped. The only good thing was that the flickering light in the distance was getting brighter. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Lin Yi immediately increased his speed. However, after a while, there was a sudden shrill sound. 10 sharp gusts of wind shot towards Lin Yi like sharp arrows. "Who is it?" Lin Yi exclaimed. With a thought, his divine will turned into a fire net and blocked all the gusts of wind. At the same time, a dazzling light bloomed and illuminated the area around Lin Yi. Lin Yi looked around and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He could see that countless birds with pitch-black metal spikes had surrounded him. Screech! Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The birds let out shrill cries. In an instant, the metal spikes on their bodies shot out and covered the sky as they stabbed towards Lin Yi. "You are courting death." Lin Yi was not afraid at all. He shouted and waved his hands. The fire net exploded and turned into a sea of fire, enveloping all the metal spikes. Beep, beep, beep. The raging flames burned. Under the scorching heat, not to mention the metal spikes, even the birds let out shrill cries as they were melted by the flames. Hiss! At night, this world seems to be filled with danger. Rolling his eyes, Lin Yi pondered for a moment, but did not take it to heart and kept rushing towards the fire ahead. Those demonic beasts had not even reached the Saint Realm. Why would Lin Yi care about them? The fire flickered over Lin Ye's body, illuminating the space around him to prevent any demons from attacking again. And yet, as if the fire was too dazzling, more demons would appear almost immediately after a wave of demons charged out. Their ability was also becoming increasingly formidable, and in the end, they already possessed the power of a demi-saint. After hunting and killing almost 10 waves of demons, a huge building finally appeared in front of Lin Yi. The building was also casually constructed with rocks and bones. It appeared to be quite old and shabby. However, the mysterious patterns on the bones flickered with radiance in the night sky. They enveloped the entire huge building, as well as the area several hundred feet behind it, protecting it within. Roar! The demons that had been chasing Lin Yi all retreated with a low growl after sensing the radiance. Clearly, they could not approach the radiance. Huh! Sensing that, Lin Yi was puzzled. Were those demons afraid of the building, or the bones that flickered with radiance? Rolling his eyes, Lin Yi took out the bones in his bosom and suddenly realized that the runes on the bones were also flickering with radiance. It was just that they were too dilapidated, and the radiance was very weak, as if it could be blown away with a single breath. Hiss! It seems that these bones still have great use. Narrowing his eyes, Lin Yi put away the bones and carefully walked towards the radiance. Without any obstruction, Lin Ye's body passed through the radiance and entered the building. All at once, a strange singing voice rang beside Lin Ye's ears. Looking up, he saw a group of people dressed in animal hides nearby, their faces painted with strange patterns. They were dancing in front of a bonfire, emitting strange sounds. Is this an offering? Lin Yi was startled at the sight. After taking a closer look, he realized that there were countless stone houses within the building, and that everything else was no different from an ordinary village. At the very center, a bonfire burned fiercely, with dozens of people dancing about. Beside them, there were almost 100 people kneeling around, their faces respectful, as if they were praying for something. What is this place? Even an offering is being made. End of chapter. Chapter 690. Looking at this scene, Lin Yi frowned. He stopped in his tracks and did not rush forward. The group of people did not notice Lin Yi's arrival and continued to worship in an orderly manner. Roar! After a while, a tiger's roar sounded. Light scattered and formed a white tiger. It roared endlessly and looked extremely ferocious. This is great. The guardian spirit has appeared. When the white tiger appeared, the group of people were ecstatic and kept kowtowing. Then, the white tiger disappeared and countless rays of light fell on everyone's body. Buzz! In an instant, everyone's physique improved significantly. Even their mental states were restored to their peak. What method is this? It can increase one's strength? With his mouth slightly open, Lin Yi was stunned as he looked at the group of people whose strength kept increasing. It was the first time he had seen that one could gain strength through worship. Although the strength of that group of people was extremely weak, Lin Yi was extremely curious about their cultivation system. Could it be that this new space had given birth to a brand new cultivation system? If the existing cultivation system was combined with the cultivation system of this world, he wondered what would happen. As he muttered to himself, Lin Ye's body flashed, and he appeared directly above the group of people. Who is it? Hearing the voice, the group of people suddenly raised their heads. When they saw Lin Yi, they were instantly stunned and stood there in a daze. Lin Ye's attire was very different from theirs. In addition, Lin Ye's divine sense was surging. They were immediately stunned. This is the descent of a god. Everyone hesitated and looked at Lin Yi in shock. Even the people who were worshipping forgot to jump and just stared blankly at Lin Yi. Hearing everyone's words, Lin Yi rolled his eyes and came up with a good idea. With a thought, the power of his divine sense turned into a thunderbolt and wrapped around Lin Yi. Rumble! Lightning bloomed, and flames ignited around Lin Ye's body, illuminating his majestic body. Seeing this, the group of people were no longer surprised. They kowtowed to Lin Yi and shouted, "The descent of a god." Lin Ye's strength was simply beyond their imagination. Therefore, they had already regarded Lin Yi as a god. Feeling the group's worship, Lin Yi was curious. He wondered if the rest of the people who entered Sky Market would be worshipped and treated as gods. Of course, Lin Yi only thought about it in his heart. He would never say this out loud. The god did not give up on us. Even though we are trapped in the Forgotten Land, the god can still appear. God, you must have saved us from the Forgotten Land. The group of people wearing animal skins kept kowtowing. Hearing this, Lin's words, "The Forgotten Land? Sky Market was the Forgotten Land? Or could it be that this was the Forgotten Land in Sky Market?" Lin Yi rolled his eyes and shouted, "I am the Saint of Thunder and Fire. Who are you?" His voice was like thunder, reverberating in the ears of the group of people and shaking their minds. Saint of Thunder and Fire. Which god is this? I don't think I've heard of him. Could it be the new god entered the Forgotten Land by mistake? In an instant, the group of people could not help but discuss in low voices. Lin Yi had been paying attention to the changes in the group's expressions. After noticing that they were a little surprised, he spoke again in a thunderous voice. "Who are you? Why are you in the Forgotten Land?" As soon as he finished speaking, the group of people kowtowed again and begged, "God of Thunder and Fire, we were originally the protectors of the Heavenly Feather Continent. 10,000 years ago, We were framed by someone and were punished by the gods to come to the forgotten land. Honorable God of thunder and fire, can you bring us out of the forgotten land? We were set up. If we are trapped in the forgotten land, our entire race will face a disaster. Yes, honorable God of thunder and fire, please save us. In an instant, hundreds of people kowtowed. A special force rushed out of their bodies and turned into an invisible force that floated in front of Lin Yi. Looking at the invisible force in front of him, Lin Yi squinted his eyes and stared at it. He could feel that the invisible force had greatly improved him. However, it was especially strange. It seemed to contain the beliefs of everyone below. If Lin Yi was unable to save those people and meet their expectations after absorbing this power, then perhaps this power would instead be harmful to him. What is this thing? It's so strange. Looking around, Lin Yi only hesitated for a moment. Then he gritted his teeth and absorbed the invisible force into his body. Buzz! In an instant, Lin Yi's spiritual power mutated again and became more sensitive. At the same time, Lin Yi's mind was filled with the wishes and thoughts of the people below. This caused him to be rather surprised. He didn't expect that a group of people with such weak strength would actually have such a powerful will. I'm aware of your wishes, said Qin Wentian. Lin Yi rolled his eyes and said in a deep voice, tell me everything you know about the Forgotten Land. Otherwise, I won't be able to take you out. I can only go out alone. Hearing this, the people below all became suspicious. Normally, a god was completely capable of bringing an entire tribe out with him. However, they thought about it and realized that they had never heard of Lin Yi's name. They thought that he was a new god and no longer doubted him. They immediately welcomed Lin Yi down and treated him with great respect. Then, they told him everything they knew about the Forgotten Land. The Forgotten Land, just as Lin Yi had guessed, was an area that had been banished. In it, there were countless tribes. They were either criminals or framed, so they could only live in the Forgotten Land forever. Not only was there a lack of spiritual qi, but there were also countless demonic beasts, especially at night. As long as it was not a village and was protected by divine power, the rest of the place was occupied by demonic beasts. According to the people in the village, the strongest demonic beasts were close to the god level. However, they could never break through to the god level. In the Forgotten Land, there was no rule power. No matter how talented or powerful one was, one could not break through to the god level. This place was like a cage. After hearing this, Lin Yi had a rough understanding of the Forgotten Land. There were 3 ways to get out of the Forgotten Land. First, the god would give a decree to cancel the punishment of a tribe. Second, find the guardian of the Forgotten Land and kill him. The third was to pass through a legendary passage. After thinking for a while, Lin Yi chose the third way. End of chapter. Chapter 691. The first method required him to contact the so-called heavenly god in the upper world. Lin Yi couldn't do that. Killing the guardians was too troublesome. Moreover, there were many sealed people in the Forgotten Land. If the guardians died, the entire Forgotten Land would be in trouble. Lin Yi had just arrived in the heavenly ruins, and it would be troublesome if he caused trouble. Thus, he could only try the third method. With Lin Yi's strength, wouldn't it be easy for him to pass through a passage that restricted people below the Saint Realm? After making up his mind, Lin Yi calmed everyone down and sent them out to search for information about the others. Even though Yi-In and the others weren't familiar with him, they were still disciples of the Cebu Gakuin. Lin Yi wouldn't ignore them. The next day, as the sun rose, the light that enveloped the village dissipated. The runes on the bones no longer emitted light. Everyone in the village started to search for information. Lin Yi didn't stay idle. He searched for information about the others and the entire Forgotten Land. After all, those people were sealed. Even though they had lived in the Forgotten Land for several hundred years, there were still many things that they couldn't find. It had to be said that the Forgotten Land was huge. Even with Lin Yi's speed, he couldn't finish searching in one day. There was a village every 300 feet. Some of the stronger villages occupied more land, and they weren't inferior to a city. At the same time, their strength was much stronger than ordinary villagers. Of course, even though they were strong, they still hadn't broken through to the Saint Realm. The strongest person Lin Yi sensed was only a fifth tribulation half-true saint. They couldn't even take one move from him. Obviously, the gods they spoke of in this world were existences above the Saint Realm. However, Lin Yi still didn't have any clue about the Forgotten Land's mysteries. After 3 days, Lin Yi finally searched the entire Forgotten Land. However, he didn't find anything strange. He also didn't meet Yi Yin and the others. In fact, he hadn't met any of the geniuses from the 4 major regions who had entered the Sky Market. Those who were qualified to enter the Sky Market world were at least at the peak of the Great Sage Realm. If they came to the Forgotten Land, Lin Yi would definitely be able to sense it. This made Lin Yi extremely flabbergasted. Could it be that he was the only one who was lucky enough to come to this Forgotten Land? On the 4th day, Lin Yi gave up on searching for the rest of the people. He ordered the villagers to pack up their things, while he himself flew towards the largest city in the Forgotten Land. It was a city with countless bones hanging on it, carved with all kinds of strange runes. In the past few days, Lin Yi had also used illusions to ask the people in the village about the bones. However, they did not understand the principles behind the bones. They only knew that the runes carved on the bones had special power. Moreover, what they cultivated were the runes. By carving the runes on their bodies, they would subtly improve their physique, allowing them to possess all kinds of abilities. This kind of cultivation method made Lin Yi extremely surprised. However, the strength of the people in the village was too low and they couldn't touch the core. He could only choose to go to a stronger city. After sneaking into the city, Lin Yi sensed for a while and directly found the strongest person. He quietly surrounded him. In the secret room, Su Fuwu, who was cultivating, suddenly felt uneasy. He frowned slightly and exited his cultivation state. The moment he opened his eyes, Su Fuwu was shocked. He clenched his right hand into a fist and suddenly punched forward. Buzz! As he punched out, runes immediately flickered on Su Fuwu's arm. In an instant, 1,000 kilograms of power exploded, mixed with a wild wind, whistling incomparably. Bang! Crack! Amidst the crisp sound, Su Fuwu's expression changed drastically. He let out a miserable shriek. He only felt a huge force sweep out. In the next moment, his arm was broken. A figure stood quietly in front of Su Fuwu. The thing that blocked the punch was a pair of palms. This power is actually not much weaker than a 9th tribulation half-true saint. Feeling the power of that punch, Lin Yi was quite surprised. Although the power of that punch was not as strong as the saint energy, just by looking at the instantaneous explosion, it was much stronger than the saint energy. Of course, there are also flaws. If a 9th tribulation half-true saint had struck that punch, under the circumstances where Lin Yi did not retaliate, he would at most be sent flying. It was impossible for his arm to be broken. In other words, this kind of cultivation method's defensive power and physique were not as strong as holy force. After realizing this point, Lin Yi's interest in this kind of cultivation method decreased significantly. Who are you? Su Fuwu's body trembled as he looked at Lin Yi with fear in his eyes. He was afraid that Lin Yi would kill him the moment he made a move. In this Forgotten Land, Su Fuwu could be said to be the strongest person. Outside the secret training room, there were many experts protecting him. However, this guy in front of him was able to sneak in without making a sound. He was even able to ignore his attack, and the rebound force caused his arm to break. This kind of strength caused him to be extremely terrified. Who am I? Lin Yi rubbed his nose and suddenly sat down cross-legged. He said in a low voice, "As long as you cooperate with me, I won't hurt you. As for my identity, at least for now, you don't have the qualifications to know. Then, what do you want me to do?" Su Fuwu gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "As long as you say it, I will do my best to satisfy you. And it's very simple. I want to know what the runes on your body are." Lin Yi took out a skeleton and pointed at the runes on it. He said, "Also, how are these bones carved with runes made? I have tried to complete the runes on the bones, but it was useless." Ah. Hearing this, the corners of Su Fuwu's mouth twitched incomparably. The original horror turned into shock, and his face was filled with disbelief. You, who are you?" Su Fuwu cried out in alarm as he pointed at Lin Yi, his entire body trembling. A terrifying thought quietly appeared in his mind. "Oh, didn't you hear what I said just now?" Lin Yi's face turned cold. He waved his right hand, and the power of his divine sense turned into purple thunderbolts, which quietly wrapped around Su Fuwu. Crackle, crackle. As the thunderbolts bloomed, Su Fuwu felt his entire body go numb and uncontrollable. "If you say any more nonsense, I will kill you directly." As soon as he finished speaking, a biting cold, murderous intent pierced Su Fuwu's neck. Su Fuwu's hair stood on end and cold sweat flowed down his body. He swallowed his saliva and said, "We cultivate divine runes. However, this is the Forgotten Land, and we are unable to comprehend divine runes. Therefore, we can only cultivate bone runes." Divine runes? Bone runes? End of chapter. Chapter 692. Sacred Runes? Bone Runes? Frowning, Lin Yi touched his nose and asked, "How are the bone runes formed? Are the runes on your body cultivated or transplanted?" There are two types of bone runes. Under the threat of death, Su Fuwu did not resist. He revealed all the information he knew. The first type of bone runes comes from the bodies of beasts and ancient foreign tribes. In the process of their cultivation, the bones in their bodies are influenced by the power and will condense bone runes. The second type of bone runes comes from the human body. After studying the bone runes of beasts and ancient foreign tribes, we condense the power in them into the body and form the acquired bone runes. When one's strength reaches a certain level, the runes will be engraved on the bones and contain a strong power. Su Fuwu continued, "Every bone rune corresponds to a special power. Even if the owner dies, the bones can preserve that power." Hiss! This power is very strange. Lin Yi raised his eyebrows. He was curious about the bone runes. If the bone runes could coexist with saint force and divine sense, it might be a great help to Lin Yi. "Show me the power of different bone runes." Rolling his eyes, Lin Yi waved his right hand, and the power of his divine sense spread out like a spring breeze, brushing against Su Fuwu. In an instant, Su Fuwu was shocked and looked at Lin Yi. In just a breath's time, he felt a warmth in his right hand, and in the next moment, his broken arm recovered. It was shocking. Well, what kind of strength is this? Could he be a god? No. If he is a god, how could he not know about divine runes? Hiss! Could it be that he really came from another world? Su Fuwu suddenly thought of a possibility recorded in the ancient books, and cold sweat dripped down his forehead. Noticing this, Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and said, "I will say it again. Show me the power of the bone runes. Also, if you don't listen to what I say next time, there's no meaning in your life anymore." Yes. Su Fuwu was instantly jolted awake when he felt the piercingly cold, killing intent. He didn't dare hesitate any longer and wave his hands. In the next moment, two talisman markings appeared on his hands. Raging fire. With a soft shout, Su Fuwu pushed his hands forward. The bone pattern contained within them suddenly released two flames that surged into the distance. With a flash, Lin Yi directly flashed into the flames and felt the damage. It had to be said that the power of the bone marks was indeed powerful. If Su Fuwu's strength was converted to holy force, he would only be a fifth tribulation half-true saint. However, the power of the bone marks was comparable to a ninth tribulation half-true saint. Mad fist. Su Fuwu withdrew the flame, shook his shoulder, clenched his right hand into a fist, and punched out. Runes appeared, and the power within them was as heavy as a mountain. Boom, boom, boom. Immediately after, Su Fu experimented with the power of many different bone patterns, such as thunder, gale, and moonlight saber. The power was extremely shocking. The more he sensed, the more Lin Yi was interested in the bone patterns. In the end, Su Fu even released a power comparable to a true saint, causing the entire secret room to tremble. Although this power was weak to Lin Yi, Su Fu was able to release the power of a true saint with his fifth tribulation half-true saint cultivation. This was enough to prove the power of the bone marks. Even Lin Yi couldn't achieve this without using his divine sense or supreme saint artifact. It would be great if these bone marks could merge with divine sense and holy force. Rubbing his nose, Lin Yi said solemnly, "How do you cultivate these bone marks? How do you cultivate?" After hesitating for a moment, Su Fu said in a frightened voice, "We observe the bone marks and comprehend the power within them. After successfully comprehending them, the bone marks will enter our body and allow us to control them. The deeper we comprehend it, the stronger our control over that power will be. How many bone marks do you have? Show them to me." Lin Yi said solemnly, "If you succeed, seeing how cooperative you are, I can give you a good fortune." This, Su Fu rolled his eyes and stood up immediately. He walked to the secret room and took out some skeletons. On those skeletons, there were strange runes engraved on them. Rays of light circulated around them. Su Fu already understood that Lin Yi was definitely not someone from his world. However, Lin Yi's strength was as strong as the legendary heavenly god. In addition, Lin Yi was interested in the bone marks. Su Fu suddenly thought of a possibility. Perhaps he could hug Lin Yi's thigh and leave this place. Therefore, Su Fu did not hesitate, nor did he hide anything. He directly took out his collection of bone marks and offered them to Lin Yi. "Lord, these are all bone marks. You can cultivate them as you wish." Su Fu revealed a flattering smile. "Oh!" Raising his eyebrows, Lin Yi looked at Su Fu in surprise. He did not expect him to make such a choice. "Fine, since you're so loyal, I'll give you a reward." With a thought, a drop of origin source heavenly water appeared and entered Su Fu's body. Boom! In an instant, surging saint power cleansed Su Fu's body like a holy radiance. They mainly cultivated bone marks, but their physiques were not strong. After accumulating for a long time, there were many internal injuries in their bodies. Under the effect of the origin source heavenly water, Su Fu's internal injuries dissipated at an extremely fast speed. His qi and blood power recovered to their peak state in an instant. Feeling the changes in his body, Su Fu was stunned. He was even more certain that his decision was right. However, the benefits of the origin source heavenly water were not limited to this. After strengthening Su Fu's physique, the many bone marks engraved on Su Fu's body were also strengthened. They began to operate and emitted a bright light. Sensing this, Su Fu's expression changed slightly. He hurriedly sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate. "This fellow is quite clever. Perhaps I can bring him out as well." Sky Market, what kind of place is this? It's clearly a world built by the people of the 4 major regions, but it actually has its own cultivation system and history. Looks like this matter is of great importance. Narrowing his eyes, Lin Yi did not think about anything else. He took out a bone mark engraved with runes and carefully observed it, feeling the energy ripples within it. Buzz, buzz. A gentle light slowly emerged from the bone marks and lingered around Lin Yi. End of chapter. Chapter 693. Hum, hum, hum. The bone runes that were shining with 7 colors intertwined into a light shadow, lingering around Lin Yi. Lin Yi's talent was not weak. In addition, his divine sense had reached level 59. Comprehending the bone runes relied on the divine sense, not to mention that the power level of the bone runes was weaker than the divine sense. In just half a day, Lin Yi had comprehended the so-called bone runes into his own ability. Moreover, he had thoroughly analyzed the bone runes. In layman's terms, The bone runes condensed power on the bones and survived in the form of a formation. After a person died, their bones would be separated from their body, and the formation on the bones would seal that power. If someone could unlock the formation, they would naturally be able to come into contact with the power and gain a subtle improvement in comprehension. After a long time, they would naturally be able to comprehend the power and borrow it. The stronger the talent, the faster the speed of comprehension, and the stronger the power they could control. If that's the case, I can completely condense my own power into the bone runes. No, the saint power and divine sense are too strong, and the bone runes can't withstand it. When I get out of this so-called forgotten land, I must find a chance to study the divine runes. Lin Yi made up his mind and immediately ended his cultivation. In an instant, the endless bone runes, like flowing light, entered Lin Ye's body. The surging power, like a volcanic eruption, suddenly rushed out from the bone runes. Bang, bang, bang. Without any hindrance, the energy blasted the entire secret chamber apart. Fortunately, Lin Yi reacted quickly. With a wave of his hand, he used the divine sense to protect Su Fuwu, who was cultivating at the side. Su Fuwu would have been directly blown to death. Swoosh, swoosh. The secret chamber collapsed. In an instant, the entire city was alarmed, and countless people began to rush over. Cough, cough. The sound of coughing rang out. Su Fuwu finished his cultivation and woke up. Before the ecstasy on his face appeared, he realized that something was wrong with the secret chamber, and the corner of his mouth could not help but twitch. He had spent more than 10 years building this secret chamber. It was supposed to protect him, but now it was destroyed. However, when he thought about how his cultivation level had increased, how he had activated the power of the bone patterns, and even reached the realm of Saint, which was also the god they spoke of, all the depression in Su Fuwu's heart turned into ecstasy. After his ecstasy, Su Fuwu's expression changed slightly. He hurriedly knelt down on one knee in front of Lin Yi and respectfully kowtowed. "Thank you, sir, for the good fortune you gave me, allowing me to make another breakthrough. If you perform well, I can help you break through your shackles." Lin Yi looked indifferent. "I don't dare." Su Fuwu rolled his eyes and suddenly said, "I only hope that I can follow by your side in the future." Oh, hearing this, the corners of Lin Ye's mouth curled up, revealing a smile. He sized Su Fuwu up and couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Good boy, your wishful thinking is pretty good. I'll leave the rest to you. Don't let anyone else discover me. If you perform well, I can let you follow by my side." As his voice fell, Lin Ye's body had already disappeared in front of Su Fuwu. Seeing Lin Yi suddenly disappear, Su Fuwu swallowed a mouthful of saliva, immediately feeling extremely excited. The stronger Lin Ye's strength, the happier he was. At least, the hope of being able to leave the Forgotten Land increased by a fraction. Su Fuwu had been trapped in the Forgotten Land for hundreds of years. As long as he could get out, he would pay any price. Before long, the rest of the people rushed over. Seeing that Su Fuwu was fine, they heaved a sigh of relief. After Su Fuwu settled everyone down, he hurriedly dispersed them and waited for Lin Yi to descend again. At the same time, Su Fuwu even went to the secret chamber and took out all of his collection. Su Fuwu was the strongest person in the entire Forgotten Land, after all. His private collection was especially rich, and there were actually many bone patterns. "Bring all of these bone patterns for me to study." Lin Yi suddenly appeared behind Su Fuwu. Looking at those bone patterns, his eyes narrowed slightly. Su Fuwu had long guessed Lin Ye's strength and was not too surprised. He very decisively handed over all the bone patterns to Lin Yi. "All right, do you know the difference between divine marks and bone patterns?" Lin Yi suddenly asked. Although the bone patterns were strong, they were ultimately not as strong as saint power and divine sense. If one could not fuse them, studying the bone patterns would be a waste of time. "This I don't know." Su Fuwu smiled bitterly and said, "I lived in the Forgotten Land since I was young and have never come into contact with divine marks. Even in the ancient books, the records about divine marks are very little. It seems that no one has ever seen it before." "All right." All of a sudden, Su Fuwu's eyes lit up as he shouted. I remember now. According to the legends, there is a passageway in the Forgotten Land that leads to the outside world. Inside that passageway, there are divine runes, the only divine mark in the Forgotten Land. Hiss, rolling his eyes, Lin Yi said in a deep voice. Then do you know where that passage is? I don't know. Su Fuwu shook his head and said, that passage is extremely special. It appears sometimes, and sometimes it is invisible. It is said that it will only appear once every 100 years. Sir, are you planning to leave this place? Speaking of this, Su Fuwu looked at Lin Yi with eyes full of hope. Clearly, Su Fuwu also wanted to leave this place. Hiss only appears once every 100 years. Frowning slightly, Lin Yi could not help but feel conflicted. His time was very tight. It was simply impossible to spend so much time waiting here. However, that passage had divine marks, and the method was the fastest. It was worth waiting for a period of time. These few days, go outside and walk around more. See if you can find that passage. After a long time, Lin Yi gritted his teeth and said, if you can't find that passage within 5 days, bring me to the place where the guardian is. With your strength and status, you should be able to find the guardian, right? Of course I can. Seeing that Lin Yi really had the intention of going out, Su Fuwu could be said to be wildly ecstatic. Without any hesitation, he agreed. Then you go and look. 3 days later, I'll wait for you here. Nodding his head slightly, Lin Yi put away all of the bone patterns into the 9-level space. Flicking his sleeves, his figure flew up, rushing towards the initial village. He already received that massive power. If he did not bring those people out, that massive power would be harmful to him instead. Returning to the village, everyone could not find Lin Yi and were all incomparably anxious. Only all the way until Lin Yi appeared did they calm down. Lin Yi made everyone continue to search for the passage, as well as traces of the rest of the people. However, this time, everyone in the village became anxious, their hearts restless and uneasy. End of this chapter. Chapter 694. 3 days passed quickly. The people in the village still could not find the passage. As for the others, there was no news. Lin Yi could roughly confirm that the others had not been sent to the Forgotten Land. Immediately, he led the entire village to the city where Su Fuwu was. The people in the village only believed in Lin Yi's strength when they saw that he could fly on the clouds. Arriving above the city, Lin Shui used his divine sense to locate Su Fuwu, who was making arrangements for his funeral. It had to be said that Su Fuwu was very perceptive. 3 days ago, Su Fuwu saw that Lin Yi was unwilling to take his people away. Therefore, he only said that he would follow Lin Yi. Now, he had arranged everything in advance. It could be considered as an explanation to his people. After Su Fuwu finished his instructions, Lin Yi used his divine thought to let Su Fuwu fly up. In the air, Su Fuwu was surprised to see hundreds of ant-like existences standing behind Lin Yi. Su Fuwu rolled his eyes and didn't say anything. He only bowed respectfully to Lin Yi. Sir, I am stupid and did not find the passage. It's okay. Lin Yi nodded slightly. Since they could not find the passage, they could only rely on the guardian. This seems to be Su Tianren, the existence closest to God in the Forgotten Land. It's really him. Hiss, I didn't expect that even Su Tianren would be a follower of the god of thunder and fire. In the village, some people recognized Su Fuwu and were shocked. Okay, it's time to leave the Forgotten Land. With a slight cough, Lin Yi said to Su Fuwu, you lead the way and take us to the guardian. Okay. Su Fuwu was delighted and immediately led the way. Lin Yi and the others rushed into the distance as if they were flying on the clouds. Su Fuwu became more confident after realizing this. He had challenged the guardian before. Although he was defeated in a few moves, he could roughly tell that the guardian's strength was only at the early stage of the god realm. However, the impression that Lin Yi gave him was that he was unfathomable. According to their world strength, they were absolutely true god realm or celestial deity realm powerhouses. The Forgotten Land, after all, had countless secrets. Under Su Fuwu's lead, they actually came to an area that had never been explored before. Countless bone runes scattered in the surroundings, and a lot of power appeared. A moment later, a huge hall appeared in front of everyone. Different from the buildings in the Forgotten Land, this palace was quite luxurious and dazzling. Every building was engraved with complete bone runes, which contained powerful energy that protected the palace. These bone patterns, Lin Yi sized up those bone markings and was rather surprised. The power of the bone markings could actually connect together. Previously, the bone markings that Lin Yi had come into contact with were all one kind of bone markings that contain a kind of power. The power of the bone markings was also used separately. Even Su Fuwu was the same. But now, the power of the bone markings on this palace fused together. Your Excellency, these are pseudo-divine runes. Su Fuwu had already guessed Lin Ye's identity and knew that he didn't know much about the bone inscriptions. He immediately explained, the biggest difference between bone inscriptions and divine inscriptions is the degree of fusion. Each kind of divine rune is virtually comprehended by oneself. It's a unique power. At the same time, the power of the divine runes can completely fuse with the bone markings. After the bone markings in the body are all assimilated, the power will fuse into one. Like this, when the power fuses together, but the divine rune has not completely devoured the rest of the bone markings. It's a pseudo-divine rune. Hearing that, Lin Yi came to a realization. No wonder he kept feeling that the cultivation method of bone markings had a flaw. He did not expect that was just the prerequisite cultivation method. It was also no wonder that no one could leave the Forgotten Land for so many years. This piece of heaven and earth had a repulsive nature towards divine runes, only allowing the existence of bone markings. No matter how strong one's talent was, if one could not condense a divine rune, how could one break through to the divine realm? I hope that after leaving the Forgotten Land, the so-called divine runes can give me a surprise. Come, follow me in. Nodding slightly, Lin Yi raised his right hand. On his arm, a bright bone markings suddenly appeared, turned into a blade, and flew out fiercely. Poochie! A crisp sound rang out, and the light screen was torn apart without any obstruction. Lin Yi immediately rushed in with the crowd. In an instant, the palace was clearly reflected in everyone's eyes. Lin Yi put down the crowd, walked up the stone steps step by step, and walked towards the entrance of the palace. Buzz! On the stone steps, almost every time Lin Yi took a step, a bone markings would appear and enter Lin Ye's body, engraving on Lin Ye's body. Buzz, buzz, buzz! Not long after, the sky was filled with shining bone markings, and Lin Yi was completely wrapped up. Looking from afar, he was like a god descending to the mortal world. Hiss, a miracle! God, this is really a god. Su Fuwu was shocked. He could feel that Lin Yi was absorbing the power of the entire palace. Hiss, this power is the key to supporting the existence of the guardian. If he completely absorbs it, will the guardian still appear? Narrowing his eyes, Su Fuwu quickly reacted and continued to follow Lin Yi forward. As for the people in the village, they knelt down again and continuously kowtowed. Rumble. Suddenly, the palace trembled as if there was an earthquake, shaking everyone's body. Who is it? Who dares to destroy the divine runes here? A thunderous voice roared in everyone's ears. In the next moment, the ground shook violently. With a loud bang, several figures broke open the palace and flew out from it. Each figure was more than 100 feet tall, like giants. At this very moment, several hundred bone markings, densely packed, appeared on several giants' bodies, erupting with powerful strength. Your Excellency, these are the puppets guarding the palace. Their strength is merely Deva realm. Leave it to me to deal with. Su Fuwu stepped forward decisively and cupped his fist to request. Raising his brows, Lin Yi swept a glance over the several puppet giants and detected that their strength was merely half-sage. He nodded his head and agreed to Su Fuwu's request. Just nice. He also wanted to see how they who possessed bone markings, fought. But Lin Yu was still a little curious. If not for Su Fuwu's words, he really could not tell that those people were actually puppets. Their bodies clearly had strong life undulations, making Lin Yu rather surprised. While Lin Yu was surprised, Su Fuwu already leaped high. On both hands, an icy blue and crimson light appeared respectively. Cold moon blade, blazing ambition. Bone markings bloomed. The icy blue blade and crimson flame howled out, whistling towards those 6 puppet giants. This chapter ends. Chapter 695. Buzz. Bright bone patterns also bloomed on the bodies of the 6 giants. Earthen yellow stone walls appeared out of thin air, blocking in front of them. This is the moment I've been waiting for. Seeing this scene, Su Fuwu shouted softly. Lightning immediately appeared in his eyes. His eyes contained a lightning bone tattoo. Crackle, crackle. Almost instantly, thunder rumbled in the air. 6 sky blue thunderbolts struck down from thin air, immediately striking the 6 giants. Rumble. After being struck by the thunderbolts, the 6 giants' bodies shook violently. Lightning burst forth, constantly paralyzing them. At the same time, bone patterns appeared on their bodies, expelling the power of the thunderbolts. Bang, bang, bang. However, after losing their support, the earthen Yellowstone walls were quickly shattered by the machete and the flames. Su Fuwu roared and waved his hands. Another bone pattern appeared, containing a strong saber intent. Buzz! The saber light broke through the air like a gust of wind, flashing by. The sharp aura suddenly split the space into 2 halves. Sensing this, Lin Yi could not help but shake his head slightly. Although the destructive power of the bone patterns was great, the other aspects were too weak. When fighting, only a few bone patterns could be used at a time. They had to be dispersed before other powers could be used. Crack! Amidst the crisp sound, the 6 giants' bodies shook. Su Fuwu was the #1 expert in the Forgotten Land. How could he miss such an opportunity? Bone patterns appeared on his feet, and he stomped on the ground. His entire body was like a cannonball that was shot out of the barrel, crashing towards the 6 giants. At the same time, lightning appeared on Su Fuwu's arms. Crackle, crackle. He punched out with both fists, and the lightning was even more intense, enveloping the 6 giants. In the next moment, Su Fuwu continuously exploded with powerful strength. All kinds of bone pattern power continuously crashed onto the giants' bodies. The strength of those giants was provided by the bone patterns on their bodies. Lin Yi had absorbed a lot of it and was greatly weakened. In addition, Su Fuwu's strength was stronger than theirs. In less than 10 minutes, the bone patterns on the 6 giants' bodies had been completely dispersed by him. Bang! With a loud and clear sound, the 6 giants immediately turned into ashes, leaving only the broken power of the bone patterns in the sky. With a slight thought, Lin Yi immediately absorbed all the power of the bone lines into his body. Lin Yi had a premonition that the power of these bone patterns would be of considerable use to him. Therefore, even though Lin Yi could not use it now, he still absorbed the power of the bone pattern into his body. It was a pity that he could only use his divine thought this time and could not use his saint energy. Otherwise, he could try to combine the 3 types of energy. Rumble. After absorbing the broken bone lines, the trembling of the entire hall became even more intense and showed no signs of stopping. This scene scared the villagers so much that they didn't dare to raise their heads. They could only cow down nonstop. Su Fuwu raised his head and stared into the distance, in the direction of the grand hall. Boom! Suddenly, bright and resplendent bone runes erupted from the entire hall. Immediately, a change occurred to the hall. With a crisp sound, the hall gradually turned into a human figure. The bone runes were engraved on its body. In the end, there was a special rune that spontaneously formed between heaven and earth. It fell from the sky and landed on its forehead. Boom! Along with the appearance of the rune, the power of all the bone patterns on the giant's body fused together. Sir, be careful. The rune on its forehead is a pseudo-divine rune. It can merge all the power of the bone patterns together. It's extremely terrifying. Su Fu hurriedly reminded him. Pseudo-divine rune? Even if it's a real divine rune, what's there to be afraid of? Lin Yi chuckled and waved his right hand. The divine thought immediately turned into a light screen. It flickered with lightning and protected Su Fu and the villagers. Although he was not afraid, he did not know how big the attack range of the divine rune was. In order to ensure the safety of Su Fu and the others, he had to be careful. Roar! Mortals, those who try to escape from the land of exile, will be killed without mercy. A muffled sound echoed like thunder. The guardian raised his right hand. In an instant, countless amounts of energy gathered and condensed into a spear of light. The light spear contained a violent power. There was saber light, sword intent, and elemental power. Spear of victory, heavenly thunder array. Without any hesitation, or more accurately, the guardian did not think at all. It raised its hand and threw the light spear. At the same time, its left hand waved gently. Thunder and lightning intertwined from the bone runes and fell towards Lin Yi. Too weak. Shaking his head slightly, Lin Yi pointed his index finger. The divine thought immediately turned into a fiery red power. It condensed into a phoenix and flew into the sky. Screech! Amidst the ferocious cries, raging flames burned. The phoenix flew past at extreme speed, instantly enveloping the lightning in the sky and the spear of light. In the next moment, a crisp sound was heard. It was the explosion of the lightning and the flames colliding. Even with the obstruction of the lightning, Su Fu saw this scene and his blood boiled. This is a real battle. This is a true powerhouse. If only I could have this kind of strength, how good would that be? Swallowing a mouthful of saliva, Su Fu looked at the collision between the flames and the lightning and clenched his fists. Bang, bang, bang. In just a few breaths, the light spear burst. The lightning was swallowed by the flames. The flames of the explosion disappeared into the sea of fire. Damn it! The guardian sensed danger. The pseudo-divine rune on its forehead flashed. In an instant, all the power in its body surged and condensed into a point, condensing on the pseudo-divine rune on its forehead. Light of destruction. The pseudo-divine rune was like an eye that suddenly opened. In the next moment, all the power of the bone runes turned into a torrent and shot toward the phoenix in front of it. Interesting. The corners of Lin Ye's mouth curled up slightly. With a thought, the sea of fire disappeared. The divine thought turned into a giant silver tiger again. It roared and leaped, waving its sharp claws and slashing at the torrent of light. You want to break the surface with a single point? Then I'll show you what it means to be invincible and unstoppable. Bang! The moment the torrent of light collided with the sharp claws, the whole world shook. In the next moment, the torrent of light shattered like glass. The giant silver tiger did not stop. After it shattered the torrent of light, its body flashed, and it was in front of the guardian. It raised its sharp claws high and slashed down. In a chapter that you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.